All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. And for those that don't know me, my name is Marc, and I am known on YouTube as Truepokerdealer. Since 2007, I've been working in casinos, and I've helped thousands of people learn to be poker dealers over the years. Probably more than that at this point. And here I am right now. So I'm in a unique circumstance. Today is 7 days that I've been in quarantine because I tested positive for COVID. My symptoms were incredibly mild. I have been vaccinated, but I have been at home, unable to leave, in quarantine. I did say in my last live stream that you could catch me at Texas Card House last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday working. I had planned on putting in long hours, but I was unable to do that because I tested positive. After my live stream about last week on Tuesday, about 4 or 5 hours later, I was cooking something and I literally could breathe totally normally, but I could smell nothing, and it was mind blowing. And I was like, oh, I guess that means that I have this. Again, I was vaccinated. I got the Moderna vaccine a while ago. I'm not trying to start a political thing whether or not you should do it, but I will tell you, I experienced a little bit of loss of smell that lasted 18 hours before it started to return a little bit, and now it feels pretty much back. And I had some fatigue for like 5 days, and that was it after being vaccinated. So either I'm sort of young and that's the reason, or the vaccine worked, or who knows. But nonetheless, I have to get a negative test before I can go back to Texas Card House. I hope to be able to go back there by this weekend. But, so as always, this is a platform where I encourage your questions about dealing poker, or anything you want to ask me is totally fine. And no topic is off limits. And I'm going to get started. Woodrow says, what is considered a fast dealer? Approximately how many hands per 30 minutes? So the first thing I'll say there is Woodrow is referring to the fact that in almost every casino, you deal at one table for 30 minutes, then you get tapped out and go to the next table for 30 minutes and get tapped out and go to the next table. So it's incredibly common as a poker dealer to deal for 30 minutes. So the question is in line with that, right? How many hands per 30 minutes per a 30-minute down is the real question there. Joshua says, thanks for pushing through. Look, honestly, I feel totally fine. The fatigue over like 3 days ago, I still have to be stuck at home due to having tested positive for COVID. I hope to get a negative test on Thursday when I do my follow-up, but we'll see. So, but I appreciate that sentiment. I swear I feel fine right now. Woodrow, so the answer to your question, Woodrow, is, first of all, it depends on what game. Let's say that we're talking about 1-2 no limit. And what is considered a fast dealer? So I'm going to say, on average, a casino hopes that their dealers are able to deal 15 hands per 30-minute down. And traditionally, when a dealer gets a handout, that's not 15 times that they pitch the cards out to everybody. That's for flops. So it only counts in this metric in the circumstance that a person has gotten a flop out there on the table. So I sort of wanted to just make that clear. I don't know why, but I want to move this over. I think I want to put that on that side there. This is the queen of spades that you're looking at in the background here too. Something I stole from my other project, Live Poker Coaching. So yeah, so I would say a fast dealer in general is going to be somebody that can get out maybe 18 plus flops per 30 minutes at a 1-2 no limit game. And this is player dependent, so this isn't talking about the type of table where a player is just going super slow. You can discount that. It's more of like an in general, when people keep up the pace of play in a general way, that I would consider that fast. I mean, I've had people come, like I remember I was supervising one time and a dealer walked up to me, like a young, cocky type of kid who I love this guy. He's awesome. His name's Juan. Juan, if you're watching this, I'm calling you out right now for a moment that I cherish and was really funny. And he came up to me and he told me that he could definitively deal over 30 hands per down, and he's done it before. And I said, all right, I'm going to count you on your next down. I think he said 34 is about where he could reach. And listen, he's a fast dealer. I don't think he deals nowadays, but this was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. But he got up to 21, and that was number of flops. And that was impressive on itself for what it's worth. That's pretty fast. Being a fast dealer, by the way, includes more than just getting the cards out quickly. There's also a lot of things that you have to do while you're actually in the game to reduce downtime. And figuring out, so it's a combination of your mechanical speed and your hand skills and speed, ability to pitch quickly and all that stuff, and also understanding how to reduce downtime during the game. Joshua says, I'm not a dealer yet, but I have been flirting with the idea for a year. Intimidated, really. You know, my response to that is, that's smart, because a lot of people look at learning to deal poker as something that you can just do. You snap your fingers. What I'll say to you is, it's about 140 hours of intense concentration in order to get trained. And then once you pass an audition, you're really just training to pass the audition. Once you pass an audition, there's probably 1 to 6 weeks where you're going in, you're making money, so it's great, but you're really adjusting to what it's really like to deal to live players in real games. And that's another process. But the good news on that process is they tell you what table to go to, you go there, and you just learn as you go, right? You train your own habits as you go once you've already been hired. There's not very many jobs where the training is like people's money are at stake while you're training. People's money is at stake. So that's sort of an interesting vibe on that. But this is what I'll say, Joshua. You have the ability to sort of come inside yourself and think to yourself, am I ready to take on this journey to go deal? Once that becomes a yes, then you're going to get there. You just have to be really ready to commit to it. And everybody has their different ways of committing to things. And some people have a tough time committing to things. Some people have an easier time. One thing that's really nice about learning to be a poker dealer is whether you go to a traditional poker dealing school or you take my course, you're on a path to get from point A to point B, where you start out not knowing how to deal and you just sort of commit to it, and then you come out on the other side knowing how to deal. And as long as you are able to tell yourself, I'm going to give it my all, you should be able to get through the whole thing. Now, there are some qualifiers there. You know, you have to be at least capable of certain types of math. You do have to be more so for like blackjack and stuff. Poker, believe it or not, a lot of the time you can figure out ways to memorize situations. But for like pot limit Omaha, you do have to be at least a little bit decent at math. Not amazing, not a guru, not someone that like got you could have lower than like I'm just trying to think of some way to measure math skills in general. I was thinking maybe the SATs, but I actually don't want to say the wrong thing, because I believe your math skills don't have to be amazing to be a dealer, but they can't be absolutely terrible. And I say that, and I actually know people that are exceptions to that too, so it's sort of weird to say. All I'm trying to say is, if you get yourself to the point where you can actually tell yourself, you know what, I am able to completely commit to being a dealer, then you just go through whatever your process is, whether it's my online course or a live dealer school, whatever it is, you just have to commit to it and not just be on the ride, and that's the key. There are a lot of people that, and I try to communicate this, there's a lot of people that go to poker dealer school that are sort of going to it expecting the school to train them fully, instead of them committing to going through and getting what they need out of it. And to me, that's a mistake. I've watched a lot of people do that, and they don't end up having their whole self be there. It's almost like they're expecting, because they pay money for it, that it's automatically going to do the job, right? It's like if you go to college I have an engineering degree. I'm not an engineer. I went to college with a terrible mentality in terms of becoming an engineer, because I just sort of went through the motions, took the test, got the grades. That's not enough to actually do that job. And yeah, so when I went to dealer school, I originally went to a blackjack school, blackjack class, which had some other carnival games as well, like Spanish 21, 3-card poker. This is why I have such a mechanical influence on my teaching, because I believe that in poker you're going to be much better off if you have true mechanics as opposed to lazy, sometimes what you see poker mechanics with thumb cutting and stuff. But I mean, you guys get the point here. The point here is be committed to it, and whenever you're ready to say, yes, I'm going to fully commit to this, it'll work for you for sure. So I appreciate that sort of comment. And I'm curious, Joshua, how are you feeling right now after listening to that? Are you still intimidated? And what would it take for you to go from not being intimidated to being, to go from being intimidated to not being intimidated? But I appreciate these comments very much. And let's see. Let me just check the audio, make sure you guys can hear me. It looks like you can hear me fine. You know what I'm going to do? I want to hide this for a little bit. Oop, that's not the thing I want to hide. I'm going to hide this for a little bit. Better experience. I don't know what that means. I shook my head, but I don't know what it means. I feel like it's too much just to have that up there constantly. So I decided to get that little like explanation of the course down. Well, I'm going to put this up there for a second. Wait, yeah, but Joshua, what do you mean better experience? I want to know. I want to know what that means. I do want to talk about this for just a second before I take it off here, though. So this right here, it now says full Texas Hold'em course, and it says mixed games, Omaha, and stud. I actually kept the levels, the tiers the same, but I changed up what everything means in the language behind it, because I found that people were sometimes getting confused, and they were joining at the live stream level for the channel, thinking that the full course was in there, and it's not. So I've completely changed that. Let me actually pull this up so that I can show this real quick, and maybe I'll just copy this video out later and put it in to something else. So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling up the join page just so people can see what it's actually like and what's in there. And here it is. Then I have to add a window for that. Joshua says, I feel better. I would feel more comfortable after some real experience dealing. Yeah, that's a very common thing. It totally makes sense. And I personally appreciate hearing that. It's clear, right? It's like the thing that people experience is until you do it on the table, it's a little bit scary is really the answer there.
Did you know?
All right, so that I pulled this up now, so I'm going to share this screen. All right, I got this little window capture. Learning how to do all this stuff has been just fascinating, is what I want to say. All right, so it's here, and we gotta get it to show up. All right, I don't know what I did with this. That's funny. I have it be sort of transparent here. No problem. Oh yeah. So you can see right here, this is the join. When you click the join button on my channel, this is what comes up. And I'm making this look pretty. One of the downsides of doing this stuff live, right? You gotta wait sometimes a little bit. So when you click the join button on my channel, you can see right here, where do I want to put this? All right, now I do want to put this back. You can see right here that I have 3 different levels that you can join at, and I've had a bunch of people in the past join at the $4.99 a month level and think that they were getting access to the full course. It's just not how it works. Now I have it say support True Poker Dealer, so it's a little bit clearer that you don't get the full course. You don't get as much at this tier. The full Texas Hold'em course is right below it, which you can see where I took this screenshot from, and then it says mixed games, Omaha, and stud, where in addition to Texas Hold'em and how to deal poker and everything related to how to deal poker, you can also get those extra games. So I'm just putting this up here so you can see what it's like and understand that. And now that I've done this and shown this little section, I am going to hide these things so that I did that again. So that I'm not hid myself. So that I'm not constantly it and creating that feeling, because I'm not going for that feeling. I'm looking for people to come here and feel like they thing that they want, which is time and attention from me and getting questions answered and all of that. So bring on the questions, anything that you're curious about. Joshua, I'm curious if you're still here, where you live geographically so that I can sort of speak to some options for you. And I'm also curious to hear, I want to know what you've learned so far and where you learned it from that's sort of making you feel intimidated. Tallahassee, Florida. Not bad, not bad. You have a limited number of rooms that could potentially hire you out there, but actually in Tallahassee, what's the closest poker room to you out there? Or would you move if you were to do this? Let me see. This is what I want to do. I'm looking up Tallahassee, Florida poker. I see Creek Entertainment. There's Jacksonville. How close is Jacksonville to Tallahassee? Barlight Broker says, do you wear any gold jewelry while dealing? If not, why? Well, my answer to that question probably doesn't get at what you're looking for, but I like the question very much. I do not wear any gold jewelry while dealing because I do not wear any jewelry in general. It's just not something I've done. I did have a stint where I have literally one gold necklace in my life. It was like something that I was given when I was real young, and I used to wear that. It's a thin gold chain. I used to wear that sometimes until I caught it on something, and it has this little pointy part now, and I just never fixed it, and I don't like getting stabbed by it. So, and then, there's always the question, should I wear my Rolex while I'm dealing? And there's mixed results on that mentality. Some dealers say they don't like the idea of being flashy in front of the players because they believe, without really knowing, that they feel like they'll get tipped less if a player thinks that the dealer has a lot of money. Then it doesn't feel as awesome to increase the amount of money that they have in their life. Barlight Broker says you were stunting then. I enjoy this very much. So what I'll say is, I used to wear a watch on my left hand while I was dealing, and I used to wear a watch on my right hand at times, okay? I made the decision for myself that I don't want to wear anything on my wrists at all, okay? The reason is I noticed my wrists would get more tired if they were weighed down during all the motion. Think about when you're dealing, you got to do a lot of stuff. For me, I actually noticed a very mild, I'm going to call it a feeling that was like what I picture arthritis feeling like. And so I immediately stopped wearing it when my wrist got tired. This was years ago. This was 10 years ago. And that was for table games too. And I just told myself ever since then, I don't ever want to risk having that problem happen again, where something such as a piece of jewelry is adding weight to my wrist and therefore adding potential stress on my body. If you add half a pound to your wrist, you're going to definitely add more strain on your shoulders, more strain on your back, and more strain on your wrist itself. So aside from, I think, the question you're trying to ask, I personally always tell people you're going to feel it if you're anything like me and you're dealing with stuff on your wrists. Hello? What's up with that? So that's something that comes up for me that I want you guys to think about, right? It's not necessarily super easy to do all this motion with something on your wrist. That being said, I like very much the idea of any dealer who deals to represent their real, likable, charismatic, authentic personality while they're dealing, to the extent that the poker room will allow them to. So if you are somebody who is a jewelry wearer and likes to use it as almost like a peacocking method, this is a term from the pickup world, if you want to peacock with this and you like starting conversations about stuff like that, and you think that you can get people to like you as a result of wearing stuff like that, go for it. You're probably going to end up making more money as a result of that. But it has to sort of be tied to your personality. anybody who's an artistic person, if they wear stuff that properly represents their personality, people love it. They start chatting with them. It makes the person more human to the players, and they do end up getting tipped more as a result of that. So I would say whatever is your true personality. If you're trying to wear, if you like are the type of person that bought a Rolex because you're trying to fit in, that to me is not a good reason. And Rolex is like a ridiculous example. It could be anything, right? If you're wearing gold to try to fit in, that's something else. But if you are wearing a piece of gold jewelry because you absolutely love that piece of jewelry, I say go for it. I think that you being your real self and having things about the way that you present yourself to the world around you, including poker players, that captures you, I think that creates enough charisma and connection that people will like you more, even though you might be flashing a little bit that you have money. So there's that. Hopefully that answered you. And where are we at? Tallahassee. I play at Greta Poker Room, 2 hours to Jacksonville. So yeah, I would say up there, thinking about you going to be a dealer. I think there are a couple schools out there. I don't remember if there used to be one school in Jacksonville that was actually pretty good, and I would hear about it in South Florida sometimes. Whatever it is, I think in a place like there, you should be able to, like the poker rooms out there that you would potentially work at probably have a lot of business, although I don't know Greta at all. Let's look it up. I'm going to look up Greta right now. Greta Poker. That's what it was called? I'm just like, you know what? It says Creek Entertainment. Is that the same place? Poker. A lot of the poker rooms in Florida, Gretna, it says, Gretna. A lot of the poker rooms in Florida do this thing where they have the name of the casino, and then the poker room has its own separate name. So they got a $100 high hand every hour there, sort of looking through their promos to get a sense of it. I would say you are probably... It's probably hard for them to find dealers out there, especially nowadays. I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anybody there. Usually in Florida, I know the people that work in these places, and I know how easy it is to get hired. I just don't know in that case. So I would say if you commit to it, if it were me, I'd be able to get the job there. I understand why you're intimidated. So I do know for sure up there in that area, you can definitely, if you just search on Google, you can find casino events where you'd have an opportunity to deal poker if you're qualified. And you might want to reach out to some of them and see if they allow you to spend some time jumping in and being a part of all that. Because then you get some real experience for sure. Just search casino events, Tallahassee, and you'll see the different companies that pop up. Just tell them you know how to deal. Actually, maybe you answered my question below, though. My mechanics when dealing is not professional looking, but not sloppy. That's the one. So you mentioned that. So it sounds like you've learned a little bit. Maybe you learned from my free videos. If you get your shuffle down and your pitch down, they don't like do auditions. I will tell you this. This is maybe a way to cheat the system. Okay. If you do this at your own risk. All right. Absolutely do this at your own risk. When I tried dealing at a casino event in South Florida one time, I just wanted the experience of it so that I could have this conversation, and I'm glad I did this. I told them, I searched on Google for the ones in my area. I reached out to 3 of them. I told them that I've been dealing professionally for years and supervising for years as well, and I wanted to try this out. And all 3 of them basically said, can you come deal X day? They actually literally just responded and said, can you come do it? So if you tell them that you've been dealing, you got to have mechanics that at least look like it. If you tell them that you've been dealing, I mean, maybe they'll just let you come in and deal, and then you get the experience of it. The only thing that I'll say, just to be like integrity based here, is I would get your mechanics to the point where they feel good having you there. And so practice your shuffle, your pitch, because they're not going to have a shuffle machine there. Your pitch, practice cutting chips, and get yourself to the point where you can do those things fluently. I do have those videos right on YouTube. Those are free. It's lessons 1 through 6, and just give yourself that, and then go make it happen. I think if you tell them that you've been dealing, you'll probably be able to get that job. Maybe if too many people do that, then eventually they'll learn their lesson and start having some kind of audition process. But you got to keep in mind, people that go to play in casino events that are like charity events, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. It's a completely different thing. The people that are playing, they're not expecting the dealer to be perfect. I mean, it's a difference between going to a random, because this is usually at like a golf club or something like that. Golf club. It's not a golf club. What is it called? A country club. Gosh, who am I? Joshua says, thanks for the help. Yeah, so that should give you some time. And I mean, look, my advice is either find a school when you're ready to commit to it, or jump on and get my course. My course does everything you need. I mean, honestly, it's just, I tell people to either get a school or use my course instead of just telling them to use my course, because not everybody likes to learn in front of a computer. And I sort of get that, but a live class is usually going to be 1,200, something like that. Whereas, and it's when they schedule it, it's not at your pace. My course is $50 a month for Texas Holdem, and it's whenever you have time. So there's that. Let's see. So getting back to these other comments, Rolex is SS. What does SS mean? All right, now I have to do this. Learning to be vulnerable on camera was really hard. When I don't know something, though, I have to figure that out. There's way too many possible meanings of this. You don't mean screenshot. I'm curious what that means. I like when dealers have flashy jewelry. Yeah, all this gold I wear is wearing me out, all the extra weight. Absolutely. I'm glad that you said that and acknowledge that, because it's like, but you also said you really like when dealers have flashy jewelry. Why? Because being a poker dealer is something that a lot of people in our country, in the US and even elsewhere, but a lot of people in the US look at a poker dealer as like sort of living a cool life, right? Like they're facilitating a game where people are throwing lots of money here and there. And being the dealer of that, you got to have savvy. You have to know how to communicate with people. I'm going back in my course and I'm re-editing, or I'm editing the lessons that I did. I just re-released the one on Miss Blinds and the button moving and all that stuff. And I cleaned it up and all this stuff. I started yesterday going over the one on how to run your game. And in that lesson, I was like rewatching it, and it's something that's sort of a cool experience for me to rewatch my own lessons. I noticed that I was talking about how there's no training typically in dealer schools where the dealer is learning how to be a human interacting with other humans, right? Poker dealers have to be savvy. And this whole lesson is talking about how to run your game, and it's like the number one reason a dealer gets fired, and I said this in the lesson and I'll say it right now, and this is totally true. The number one reason that a poker dealer gets fired is because they don't know how to have interactions with other people. It's like they don't know how to not take offense to stuff. They don't know how to savvily work their way through things. If you're somebody that can wear flashy jewelry, you're not only saying that you're somebody who is like respectable and has charisma, you're also saying, I can deal with you, man. Like, it's something like that, right? Like, I can deal with you. You got a lot of money. Hey, I'm at this table. I'm not playing, but I'm here with you, and there's a certain acknowledgement that I don't normally talk like that, but I'm sort of projecting an image that's capturing this. There's a certain thing that can be said that anybody out there who is wearing jewelry at the table is much more likable as a result of that. And also, like, you're as a poker player, you're sort of going to give them some respect automatically if they're showing up to the table like that. And I mean, I like it. I totally like it. I don't really have to wear jewelry when I'm at a poker table because I'm True Poker Dealer. My jewelry is my YouTube channel, right? So it's a little bit different for me. I could probably have some swag and stuff like that that's related to my brand. I undersell that. I should do that more. But I mean, you guys get, like, you get it. Like, I like where Barlight's coming with this, because it does illustrate a really good point that giving yourself respect right away at the table as a dealer is a powerful thing. Now, that being said, I wouldn't do that if I sucked at dealing, right? If I was brand new and I had a lot to learn in order to be able to handle those conversations, because then I show up as a poser, right? And you don't want to show up like that either. You sort of have to be able to back it up. There's one dealer that I have a ton of respect for. I used to work with him a long time ago. He and I go head to head sometimes when we're having conversations. I was his manager, and he's one of the few guys that, you know, he had more experience than me when I worked with him 10 years ago, and he's still very respectable in the industry. I think he's in Arizona now. Like, he used to go at the players hard. He would, like, when a player started to say something that was just completely out of line or off base, he would, like, put the deck down, and he would just get into them like Bill Burr. Super hardcore like that. And I watched him do that, and he pulled it off super well. Why? He knew all the lines not to cross. He knew all the rules and the ways to explain them. And the poker player would just be like, and he's someone, I picture him, if he's wearing the jewelry and all that stuff too, I mean, it's another level is really what I'm trying to say. That being said, it does weigh your risk down. So that's a choice you got to make, right? Barlight said, so SS must have been one. What kind of Rolex do you have metal-wise? I love dealers who wear a watch. I don't actually have a Rolex. It's just a conversation that comes up a lot. I remember a dealer named Zach, who's now a dual rate, also in Arizona. He first bought himself a Rolex, and I had the conversation with him about whether or not he should wear it. And it's like, he bought he might have bought a BMW back then. And he didn't really fit the picture of all this stuff either, but he was uncomfortable and still wanted to do it. And he was like, should I wear my watch? Actually, Jerry, who I've interviewed him on this channel. He's the one that helped start all this. I never could have created True Poker Dealer without you, Jerry. He has a Rolex that he said that he's thought about wearing. I think he might have worn it one day, and someone gave him a comment. He didn't do it anymore. Yeah, so these conversations I've had with many dealers about should I wear, should I not wear. That's where that came from. I don't actually have one. And now I feel a little bit bummed that I don't have a Rolex, but, you know, I mean, I'm not going to go buy something that I feel like I don't want to wear most of the time because it makes my wrist feel tired. Like, that's just me. Rianu Keeves, very clever. Currently training to be a dealer at my local casino. Any advice on first day? I have my audition tomorrow. So this is two separate things, I think. And then down below, you also say, I have my audition tomorrow at my local casino. I know my mechanics are good, and I'm making the correct movers. I think it means movements maybe. But I know I'm fairly slow compared to the dealer I've had while playing. Genuinely nervous. So it sounds like this is probably going to be your first audition at your local casino. And the first thing I'll say is, I wish you the best of luck. And in terms of advice, so your goal while you are auditioning is, yes, it's to get the job, right? But your real goal while you're auditioning is to make it so that the person who is considering you for the position feels like you're somebody that they want to work there above your competition. Now, what types of things are going to go into that decision? Well, for me, when I audition people, the number one question that I ask myself is, does it feel like poker? Okay. And I do sort of measure whether or not the person is nervous. And a lot of auditioners do take that into account. Not everybody. I do also measure whether or not the person has ever dealt in a casino before. So I'm going to know going into it whether someone has dealt before or if they've just gone through the school. If they've only been to school, I am going to keep that in mind a little bit as I create a projection of what I think this person will be like. But I'm also, especially if my room has lots of business and I can hire anybody who I want, I'm also going to be thinking, can they do the job right now? So the number one question I ask myself while the audition is going on is, does it feel like poker? It's really easy while you're auditioning to keep the habits that you had in a dealer school, for example, where nothing truly matters. They interrupt the hand whenever they feel like it. They do all this random stuff. And you sort of train yourself in dealer school, which I don't know if you've been to dealer school, but you train yourself in dealer school that nothing matters. It's just fake money and all this stuff. You got to exit that completely. And you have to lock in and pretend that every single thing in this game is a real poker game with real money. You have to pretend that. And so that's sort of your grounding point in order to pass this audition. Now, you talked about being nervous. My first audition in casinos was actually in table games, not in poker. And I don't remember it. I was so nervous. And that's just how it works for most people. One of the services that I do offer is I allow people to do what I call a feedback session. But it's really an audition where I record it. It's a video audition, so the person would have to have a setup at home. It's a video audition where it's one-on-one, and you get the experience of being auditioned by me, and then I stop. Where regularly in a casino, when you do an audition, they're not going to give you much feedback, right? They're just going to tell you if you got the job or not. But for me, I'm going to stop you every single point and tell you, okay, make this correction. And I'll probably do that 15, 20 times during the audition. And then at the end of it, I give you instructions to go back and watch that video of yourself. And every time I correct something, train that thing I corrected until it's a habit. And what dealers have told me is that helps them calm their nerves because now they have experience in the audition feel. And I don't know any other way to get that. If you have someone who's a dealer, maybe you can have them audition you and get a similar thing. But my point in saying all this is if you go into the audition cold without any type of experience auditioning, you are going to probably be nervous. It's really hard. Your future is resting on whether or not you pass this. Okay? I would probably just focus as much as you can on making it feel like poker. You sort of implied that other people are faster than you and you're a bit slower. You cannot speed yourself up without making mistakes. Okay, so just throw that right out of your head. Go at the pace that you can, okay? Speed, auditioners do understand that speed is going to improve in time. If you're super slow, they might not be able to see that you're capable of increasing your speed enough. But, I mean, I would probably make sure to communicate to the person who's doing the audition your level of background and training to this point. And if it's only been learning in school, I would communicate that. And then if the audition did not go well, the good news is you are eligible to re-audition. And I would probably, like, after you find out, if you don't get it, if you get it, great. If you don't get it, after you find out that you didn't get it, I would probably find a way to communicate with that person, here's what I'm doing to improve after the fact, and tell them that the next time around you will have improved your skills because of what you're doing, right? Whether it's getting the True Poker Dealer course, spending time at your table at home, videotaping yourself and making these corrections, whatever it is, you know. So I think the best I can say is stuff like that. Like, go give it your all. Don't try to speed yourself up. More mistakes are made that way. When I say treat it like it's a real poker game, call the floor if you make a mistake that you need to call the floor for. You have to do that. That's definitely something that terrifies someone in an audition if a dealer does not do that properly. And you can impress the person auditioning you if you call the floor and you are capable of communicating to a supervisor in this role play what happened in a way where they feel like, oh, if this person makes a mistake, I don't have to worry about it. You know, people get upset when dealers make mistakes, but they know everybody makes mistakes, so they're interested in seeing how easily it can be resolved, right? Also, I know I'm going on a long time about this, but I think this is valuable to know as well. If they feel like you're this is hard to, it's almost impossible to fake, so I'm just going to say this and it is what it is. If you have an employee who seems like the way they communicate with everybody else is on point and clear and appropriate and pleasant, like almost like what we call bedside manner in a doctor's office, right? If your ability to communicate is you don't want to go to someone and tell them that you have great customer service skills. You want to show them. When you're dealing is a great opportunity to do that. Before you're dealing is a great opportunity to do that. If you're helpful to other people, yeah, you're competing with them. But if you're genuinely helpful and you genuinely care about everybody showing up their best, that's a great thing. Now, if you're telling them during their audition and you don't understand that's not the time to do that, like sometimes they have 10 people come in all at once, 9 people play poker, 1 person deals, and then you rotate through, and that's a 2-hour thing and everybody gets to audition. If you're correcting people in the game, that's not helpful. But if somebody says like, oh, I need a rack or something like that, and you just get up and go get it for them, I mean, that's the type of thing where you're there to be a team player and stuff like that. Remember, you're going to be an employee in this poker room, okay? If you're aware of your own needs and also helping other people around you, that's something that can help. If your communication and guest service is good, that's something that can help in your audition. And if you're overall a person that they view as someone that's easy to have work for them, that's a great thing. That's sort of what I'm trying to say there too. So hopefully that gives you what you need in order to go through tomorrow. I see my friend Nick saying, hey, Mark. Hey, Nick. Always enjoy having you here, man. Let's see. So where was I up here? Joshua says, my mechanics when dealing with... Oh, right. We talked about that. Barlight says, some people won't tip if they feel you have more than them. Seems true in the service industry in general. When I started dealing, I made a promise to myself, pot only. What does pot only mean when you say that? I made a promise to myself, pot only. So in terms of some people won't tip if they feel you have more than them, absolutely true. Also, some people will tip you a lot more if they respect you on their level, right? So if a poker player is at the table and they're playing with, like, say, I don't know if you're at a home, I don't know if you do home games or what. I feel like home games are a place where you could probably wear the flashy jewelry and get more money, for the record. In casinos, dealing like straight 2 limit in Florida or 2-4 limit, wearing a Rolex might rub people wrong, because all of them are there grinding, hoping to win a high hand to pay their rent, something like that. So it does depend on where you deal and what the vibe is like there. But I mean, if you're at a home game and you're dealing for higher stakes and you show up with flashy jewelry and you can like back it up with your personality and all that, that respect will probably get you more tips for sure, if your wrists can handle the extra weight with all that motion. Let's see. Joshua says, that's the one, thanks for the help. You're welcome. Hit Girl said, so true. I think that comment came in when I was talking about the charisma of like wearing jewelry and representing yourself and, knowing how to interact with humans in general. Something about being a poker dealer sitting in the box, sometimes it comes with the assumption that if the poker room has a lot of good dealers, a person that's used to that sees you for the first time is probably going to assume that you can handle your conversations as a human. Let's see. Crypto Brown says, hey, Crypto, what's going on? What game comes in the audition? If you're talking about the audition with me, I will ask you. So typically a poker room is going to audition you on whatever it is that they have in their room. Okay, so if they only have Texas Holdem, you're only going to do a Texas Holdem audition. If they have Texas Holdem and Omaha and Pot Limit Omaha, then that's what your audition's probably going to be. Maybe they throw some tournament in there. Depends on what they want to do. For me, I just ask you, well, where are you trying to work and what do you want to be tested on, right? So how far did you get? It's literally up to you. So I'm not going to determine that. It's going to be based on what you need to be prepared for, because I'm not offering you a dealing job, right? My audition is the only audition you do that other than the one to pass a dealer school, my audition is the only one that you do that I'm not offering you a job, right? That's the difference between a dealer school audition and a live audition. Now, I happen to have the experience of having done over 1,000 auditions in my life. And nowadays I do consulting for poker rooms and I do auditions where they have their whole thing set up and they have their table and they have their people doing auditions, and I jump in via video and do auditions for them too. That's been a really fun, interesting experience, by the way. If you do run a poker room out there and you don't feel like you have somebody that is properly qualified to do auditions, which usually one of the supervisors or managers are the ones that the rooms go to. But if you happen to be in a situation where you feel like you don't know that one of these guys can do auditions, I'm more than happy to do consulting with you. I already do that as a business, in addition to the one-on-ones and all the other stuff I do. Sometimes I feel like I do too much, honestly. So to answer your question, crypto, well, let's see, what games comes in the audition? I'm also in school in-house. Can they still fail me if I mess up, even though I'm going to their school when I audition in Florida? I mean, yeah, the way that I think it should go, which is common. So I don't know 100%. Paying the money, I can say this, paying the money to go to school should not, whether it does, I don't know at your school, but it should not guarantee you a certification. You should have to prove your skills through some sort of an audition for the school. That being said, fortunately, poker rooms nowadays, almost all the time, sometimes this is not true, but almost all the time, they don't actually care if you have a certification. So if you quit the school halfway through, they probably had you pay the whole thing already. But if you quit the school halfway through and then you are capable of showing up in an audition at a actual casino and impressing them, then you can still get the job most of the time. But yeah, in terms of what the actual audition would be like, it's just totally a question of if it's an audition at a dealing school like you're talking about, it's going to depend on what the school says that they teach you. They're probably going to test you on all that. Some of the time, the audition in the school is actually harder than the audition in the casino for the job. And some of the time it's not. Some of the time it's the other way around. I will tell you, one of the most impressive and hardest auditions I've ever done as a person trying to get a job was at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. And I did that audition with Skylar. Shout out to Skylar in Florida. Truly, truly professional, and he expects a lot from his dealers. Why? Because it's a premier room in the country, in the world actually, and they spread all the games, right? So if you go into this audition not knowing how to deal all the games, you got a tough time trying to get this one. And they have everybody wants to work there. So and that was really cool. I really enjoyed receiving that incredibly difficult audition where I dealt No Limit Holdem, Pot Limit Omaha, Limit Omaha High Low. I dealt Badesi, I believe it was, Badoogie. I dealt 7-card stud, if I didn't say that already. And I think I dealt Ace to 5 and Deuce to 7 separately as well. If I didn't deal every single one of those games, I might have only said one that I didn't actually deal. It was like that much stuff. And I interviewed someone on here who had just taken that for me, that was in 2016 that I did that. I interviewed someone on this channel. You can go back and find it. Her name is Naz, N-A-Z. And she's a real sweetheart. She's currently dealing at the Hard Rock. And I interviewed her after she passed her audition with Skylar. Coincidentally, she didn't even know that I had done an audition when we talked with him years before. And she got the job, and she described it as the exact same audition there. And so the Hard Rock's a tough place to pass, is my point, in Hollywood, Florida. Most rooms are nowhere near as difficult as that, like nowhere near it. But yeah, so I don't know, yeah, it depends where you are in Florida. Let's see. Rihanna O'Keefe says, thanks, man. Really appreciate the input. Notes were taken. Excellent. And this video is here for you if you want to go back and rewatch it. Once we're done here, you can go and rewatch it too. Crypto says, thank you. Great, man. Thank you, True Poker Dealer. You're welcome. I enjoy these conversations a lot because it's really intimidating, right? It's intimidating having no perspective and nobody to ask. And like, it's hard to get somebody who's even a dealer to give you information, but the truth is it's really hard to get somebody who you can trust that their information is reliable too. That is one of the biggest challenges in this industry, is like, who the hell am I supposed to talk to if I've never done this before and I have no network in this industry? It's part of what I'm here for. I'm here because I have that insight, I have that experience, and I have the ability to communicate. So you guys are able to enjoy this. Crypto says, you need to visit us in Melbourne Club 52. Let me look up what that is. My way of figuring this stuff out. Melbourne Wait, Club 52 in Melbourne. Is that on the west coast of Florida? Greyhound Park. Is that like near Naples? I think I've actually been to a room that I thought of it as in Naples, Florida, but maybe it wasn't. So I see Club 52. And like you go up the escalator, and then on the left, it like there's the sort of the open doorway, and then there's all those tables that go back there. And on the right, there's a bunch of table games. More recently, I've seen. If that's the room you're talking about, I have been there. I have played some poker there years ago. And I live in Texas now. I used to live in South Florida, so that was a lot closer. But let me see. Melbourne Greyhound Park. Yeah, I see that there. I'm on the website there. Let me see where that is, though. Oh, so you're saying, yeah, that's the room, right? See, I get around, you know. I look for stuff, I find it. And this is the one that's like sort of near Naples, right? I'm just like zooming out on Google Maps to see. Oh no, it's not. That's not the one I'm talking about. This one's near Palm Bay. Cool. Yeah, I've never been there. Interesting. All right. Well, I mean, ironically, I just took a trip to Orlando for my kid's 7th birthday. We went to Universal Studios. I got COVID while I was there, so I'm literally stuck in quarantine here. I've been vaccinated. I said it at the beginning of this live stream. My symptoms were incredibly mild. I lost my sense of smell, even though I could breathe totally fine. That was a trip. Like, imagine breathing fine and smelling coffee and getting nothing out of it. That blew my mind. And then I had some fatigue, and I'm stuck in quarantine right now. I can't even go back to work until I get a negative test, even though I feel totally fine now. But my point was, I was just out in that area at Universal, which is really close to where you're talking about. And had we talked about this before my trip, maybe I would have checked it out. And actually now it's probably good that I didn't. By the way, Universal Studios right now, really fun, but there's like no masks and thousands of people. Like, that's how I got COVID, just around everybody. And I'm vaccinated, so it was weird, but that's life, I guess. I guess the vaccine did its job. It's not supposed to prevent me from getting it. It's supposed to make it so that my symptoms are pretty much what they were, which was mild. But I have been stuck in my place for a week now, and I'm really happy that my symptoms haven't been bad, but it's weird not being in the world at all. Michael says, thanks for the content. I just started dealing 3 weeks ago from being a player who had never dealt just by watching your free training videos. Listen, I have heard that story before, and I'm really happy to hear that you were able to do that. Congratulations. That means that you were able to learn how to shuffle, how to pitch, how to cut chips, how to handle chips, how to bring a flop, turn, and river. I think those are my free videos. That's really good. Most people they require going through the whole course. And I should undo this here. So in case you guys didn't see it, I've actually changed the name of what I offer the course as. Most people need to learn like how to interact with the bank, the rules of poker, there's so much stuff to learn is really what it is. So that's really cool. Anybody who really, really, really knows the game of poker as a poker player, you've got a shot to do what Michael did with my free videos. And if you can do it, that's great. Let's see. Started dealing 3 weeks ago. So Michael, can I put you on the spot without I don't want to have you give anything specific, but can you tell people how the money is? I don't know where you work. I don't know. Yeah, just, is it satisfying? Curious about that. Yeah, so I did change though. If you go to the join button on my channel and you want to access the full Texas Hold'em course, it teaches everything. You know, this is, if you're Michael and you've been playing poker for a long time, you have the ability, if you know all the detailed rules, but you also, I mean, Michael probably is a winning poker player or close to it in order to have spent enough time at the table to be able to like have the experience in order to do that, right? So you're either paying for the course or you're paying for the course, if you know what I'm saying. I'll take this back off. I don't like leaving this up here anymore. It's right here, yeah. But thank you for that shout out too, and I'm glad it worked out for you. D1 Keys, is a card room better to work at than a casino, or does it not matter? Casinos, I think overall a card room is probably going to be a better experience, but it's really close. Casinos, I'm gonna talk about the pros for each. Okay, on the casino side, if you work at a bigger casino, you're probably gonna get free food. You're not gonna get that at a card room. You're probably going to get, I mean, I've never heard of a card room that has the ability to offer free food, is what I'm trying to say. You're probably going to get access to a lot more people in the break room. You're going to meet a lot more people. A casino is probably going to stick around longer. Card rooms can sometimes be wiped out under circumstances where like if a casino opens near a card room, it might be tough for the card room to keep business. But if it's a card room that's, solid and doesn't have to worry about that, then that's fantastic. Casinos are also a lot more strict because their dealers are dealing with a lot of, like, their entire operation is trained to deal with large amounts of money, and that training sort of filters into poker when it sometimes doesn't matter as much, but it's impossible for them to wrap their heads around it. In a card room, you have more flexibility and freedom to be you. In a card room, you can sometimes it's easier to manage a card room because you don't have to worry about people. Like, you can kick people out more easily in a card room because you don't worry about losing slot and table games business. You can sort of just make it a really well-oiled machine in a card room. And for a dealer, that's great. There's less procedure. You don't necessarily have to do everything perfect all the time. It's less likely that the state's going to come in and check things to make sure your dealers are clearing their hands and all this stuff, which you should clear your hands every time you have stopped touching money and there was any opportunity for theft. You should do that because it protects you. The GM of Texas Card House, somebody who years ago, I actually used to be his manager and I helped train him as a floor. Nowadays, he's a GM of Texas Card House Dallas. Shout out to Victor, you're amazing. He was talking about to his entire staff in a mandatory meeting in a card room. Texas Card House Dallas is a card room, not a full casino. He was saying, like, listen, clear your hands, but don't do it for me. Do it for you, right? I think he actually asked, does anybody know who you're clearing your hands for? It's for you to protect yourself, because if anything comes up, well, the cameras are the things that get looked at, and if you do something that incriminates you to possibly, like, for whatever is being investigated, right? If you have done something that where you put your hand in the well and then you started doing something else and you never cleared your hands, you're making it so that Victor or the property surveillance or whoever can't definitively say that you didn't do anything. So therefore, it might fall on you. But if you clear your hands, then it's like, no, look, hands are cleared. There's no chance that this person did anything wrong. So, it's sort of an interesting perspective there. But what were we saying? But yeah, in general, I personally like a card room better because it's like there's a little bit less stuff to deal with. But I also like it. Like, I like free food. It's really hard for a casino to have truly good free, what they call EDR food, the employee dining room. But I will give props. I have worked at 2 places where the food's actually been decent. There have been people that complained about it for sure. But compared to like what I've experienced in the past, like, the Seminoles got it right when it came to so many different things. And that's a perk of it. Another thing that sort of stinks, it's just true. If you work at a casino, a lot of the time you're not allowed to play at the casino. Sometimes at a card room, you can actually still play at the card room. Although I have worked at a casino where you could play at the casino. Even as a poker employee, you could play in poker. But that was a very, very small casino. I mean, in a card room, you're limited to your ability to move up, I guess. But I like in a card room, it feels more friendly a lot of the time. Yeah. There's not a right answer there, by the way. They're both great. I mean, I should have said that from the beginning. Like, there's not a right answer. Card rooms and casinos. If you're dealing poker in either of them, you have the proper security and protection. In my experience, like you're in good shape. Michael said, "D1 Keys, did that answer you? Like, what do you think of that? The stuff I said. Do you have any more follow-up questions to that?" Michael says, "I'm just dealing a nightly tournament for now until my skill set improves, but even then, it's 20 to 30 per hour." Great. Nightly tournament. So, I was scared crapless the first night, but now I feel much more comfortable and I love it. Yes, that's what happens. As I said, when you take my course, I provide. Actually, let me say this. Normally, when you learn to deal poker, when you're in a poker dealer school, or if you're learning and you're taking my course, normally your experience is going to be you learn enough to pass the audition, and then it's up to you. Once you get the job, to keep the job, right? You have to learn what it's like, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that nobody ever told you, myself included. There's so many little details of this. So there's a bunch of stuff that nobody told you that you experience, and eventually you create your comfort with it as you train this to yourself and train this habit and all this stuff. That being said, I do include a lot of that stuff in my course that you don't see in a dealer school. It's one of the advantages of being able to create video content for something like this. I'm able to touch on topics that you can choose whether or not you spend the time with, and my course will make it easier for you on your first day than if you go and go through a regular dealer school. The dealer school will make it so that the audition is probably a little easier because you have a lot of in-person time where you're being trained by people that are looking at you. When you take my course, I'm not watching you deal. I'm not able to correct anything that maybe my communication didn't properly get through to you. Like, I have to communicate to a broad audience of listeners, right? So there's definitely an advantage there to passing the audition, but my content does provide you with the ability to gain some of that experience before your first day so that you can possibly, I talked about this earlier. One of my lessons is how to run your game, and I talk about how a dealer has to be human in talking to other humans. And we don't train that when we're teaching you how to deal the rules of poker. But at the table, you get a lot of strong personalities that just come at you. I told about in my last live stream, I was talking about somebody that just started coming at me and how I handled it, right? And I actually do training on that in my course, but it's sort of a bonus thing, right? It's not necessarily something you need to pass the audition. So you pick and choose. By the way, the absolute best way to become a dealer that gives you the highest chance of everything is to go to dealer school and go through my course. You can do both of those, and that will give you the in-person training with somebody, and it will also give you all of the perspective and insight into the rules and insight into how things are done in different places. Usually in a dealer school, they're going to tell you to do it one way, and I promise you that there's not one way to deal poker. But like I said, you can also learn fully how to be a dealer with my course. It's just not everybody wants to sit in front of a computer all the time. I had somebody recently that's somebody that I'm friendly with. They told me that they wanted me to teach them how to deal poker, and I said, well, just take my online course. And they're like, well, no, I want to pay you because I'm a hands-on learner. And so they set it up with me to do live one-on-one sessions for my hourly rate, which is very expensive. But that's what they wanted because they had that confidence, and that's how they learn. And it's like, well, you know what? You are going to get that money back, right? Even if you learn on your own a bunch, it's as Michael just said, $20 to $30 per hour his first week just dealing tournaments, like, right? And in his case, it seems like this particular poker room that he's at, I think you said here in Ohio, so you're in Ohio. This particular poker room, not every poker room does what it sounds like Michael's room does, but in his room, he seems to just be in tournament until he gets his skills up, right? The room is choosing, hey, we want you to get better. You're good enough to get this job. We want you to get better. We're going to start you out in the place where you can do the least damage as you're learning, right? Low limit games or tournament is often the answer to that, and it is a fantastic way to get yourself used to dealing. I do like when a poker room is willing to do that. It's also possibly, I don't know for sure, possibly a sign that particular poker room has a tougher time getting people to be dealers because, well, they're willing to hire somebody that's not quite ready yet, might be the way that they're doing that. I know that in markets, I mean, this has been crazy the last year. The last year is an anomaly because of COVID. But within the last year, there's all these different markets that used to be able to get the cream of the crop for dealers that now they're having to settle with people that they wouldn't have previously hired before. And so there's training that has to go on internally in order to get people up to speed. But by the way, congratulations, Michael, for getting this job. I mean, anytime somebody gets a job, you're able to change your life and all this is amazing stuff that happens. I hope that you are doing the thing that I recommend to people to do. Try to set yourself up so that you can work not 5 days a week, maybe 3 or 4 days a week, and figure out something that you want to do in your life where you can create passive income. Being a poker dealer is a great opportunity for every single person that does it, especially if they're younger, which I don't know if you are, but I mean, I'm 39. I feel like I'm younger, so that the range is pretty big there. But it's an amazing opportunity to be a poker dealer. You pay all your bills, you get some disposable income. You don't need to do it 5 days a week, and you can spend your extra time creating passive income for yourself, figuring out other things that you might be able to set up for your life in order to have a lucrative and productive and enjoyable life. So, congratulations on that for sure. And that comment says, I know someone who just went through dealer school here in Ohio, and they told him to go watch your videos on YouTube. You may be more known than you even know. I appreciate that comment. It was actually a lot for me so in March I went and started dealing at Texas Card House in Dallas, which a lot of you guys know. And about a year and a half before that, or a year before that, it was a year before that, I started grinding super hard on YouTube on True Poker Dealer. Back in the day, I made the videos that taught people how to deal, but I really just did the mechanics. I did a little bit of the rules and procedures, and I didn't finish it at the time. And it was just because it was such a huge undertaking. And I went on and I did my whole thing as an entrepreneur, and I went on my whole journey, and I came back to True Poker Dealer. And when I came back to True Poker Dealer and I started like live streaming and all this stuff that now you guys are experiencing today, and I created my course and all that stuff, and I started interviewing people and creating these sessions available, then I went to deal at Texas Card House in Dallas, and I was actually blown away by how many people knew who I was. I hadn't really experienced that before in life. I certainly believe in my skills both as someone in the casino industry, dealer, supervisor, shift manager, ability to train, ability to communicate detailed things in the industry, and ability to communicate in general, and ability to make content. All that stuff is something that I have confidence in myself for, but I'd never been recognized before like I did when I got to that room. I mean, half the dealers at Texas Card House were thanking me as I was walking in because I taught them how to deal. Players every single day are shouting me out and all this type of stuff. I had one guy, the last shift that I dealt, really nice guy. He's got this deep voice, and he kept like, whenever he felt like it, he'd shout out to the whole table, like and subscribe, like all this stuff. And I'm like telling him, I might have to hire you, man. It's been a journey, and I really appreciate everybody with the love that they send my way. And I'm starting to learn that a lot of people are familiar in the industry. Like, I always knew that the dealer schools were picking it up, and when I would go into casinos, people would recognize me. But now I can't go into a poker room without that. And it's probably also because my original videos, I looked really young. Now I look like this. And now when I'm live streaming, I actually look like the person that people are seeing on YouTube as well. But I appreciate that comment, and I would love to meet everybody that maybe I'll do a tour someday, like a True Poker Dealer tour. I feel like I've got work to do, and I got to finish all this stuff first. Gigi, a member, thank you for being a member. Gigi says, card room has a less corporate structure, more room to breathe in my opinion. Seminoles got lots right until Europeans showed up. That's an interesting comment. I believe that there's a lot under the hood of that comment, and I'd be curious to know what you mean there. And yes, it's a very, very simple way to summarize. Sometimes I'm pretty wordy, right? Card rooms have a less corporate structure, and it's easier to just go in and chill. A lot of the time, it's a little easier to be yourself at a card room. It's a little bit easier not to get fired at a card room. It's a little bit easier to relax at a card room. which is what more room to breathe, in my opinion, means. And Seminoles got lots right. There's definitely things that the Seminoles don't do well, but when I think of them, I think of the stuff they got right. You said until Europeans showed up. I'm guessing that means that there's sort of a vibe with European players that put a demand on them, maybe. I actually don't know what that means. I want to know what that means, Gigi. Are you willing to tell us what you mean by until Europeans showed up, the Seminoles got lots right? When I think of the Seminoles, by the way, I think of the absolute best quality, like poker tables and facilities is really the right word. And like they just go for it. They have the highest quality of everything in the industry, the entire casino industry. They really do things well like that. Yeah, having worked there and been a customer there as well, that's really nice. That being said, some of the ways that they do their management and their training and all that, the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, they get the rules really right. They're really consistent and on point with that stuff. It's really hard to accomplish that. Sometimes I've worked there as a dealer. Sometimes I do wonder if the dealers are happy there, but they're happier than a lot of people, that's for sure. Michael says, I think he meant colonists. Seminole indigenous civilization was doing well until the 1600s. Now I understand what you're saying, and that's awkward. And that got way more real than I thought it was. I thought, since I haven't been in Florida in the last couple of years, I thought maybe there was something I was missing. But nope, you're talking about the settlers who changed everything and literally took away the way of life for all of the native people there. That's a heavy comment right there, Gigi. But you did it. You've got me to be a little bit on the speechless side. So, man, actually one thing I will say about the Seminoles, though, even related to this, when I first got hired there, part of their orientation was learning all about their background and history and culture, and they put together a very good presentation with a lot of interesting information about what it's like to be them, the Seminole tribe. They make sure that you know that the Seminoles are the only nation, that the only tribe in the entire U.S. that is an actual separate nation, a sovereign nation, as opposed to having reservation land. And they talk to you about how they protested in order to get that, and just what that whole process was like. And that was pretty fascinating. Gigi says history buff. They also explained to us that the Seminole tribe, maybe you guys don't know this, in I think it was 2007, they, for $960 million, they bought the entire Hard Rock brand, with the exception of like 3 total properties. And they talk about the purchase for that. They talk about how the Tampa Hard Rock is actually the one that built up the majority of their money in the beginning. I do remember personally, man, I was in college, I want to say, in 2002. I think I first took a trip down to Florida with my baseball team in college from New York, and we went to them, and they had this like gambling house. It was like a bunch of what they called Class 2 slot machines back then, and they offered $2 max limit poker. It was either 1-2 limit or 2-2 limit for the big spenders. And that whole thing, getting the compact signed with the state of Florida and all those things, has been a really interesting journey, I guess is the way to say it. When I first, I'll share this story because there's no current questions that I need to answer. When I first got to Florida in 2009, I got hired as a full-time floor at a room that I helped open in Miami Gardens, Florida, called Calder. It was Stud's Poker Room, and it was Calder Casino and Racecourse. It was just a racecourse at the time. They added the casino later. And when I first got in there, and got to be a part of this whole thing in Florida, like the room finally opened after I worked there for 3 months, and it was wild because this whole thing between the Seminoles and the state of Florida was still going on, and it is still going on. And the stage that they had reached was they only allowed $100 max buy-ins for all no limit games, and it was crazy having a 5-10 no limit with a 100 max buy-in. You'd get a table full of people that sit down, and I heard they were doing this. It wasn't on my shift because I wouldn't have allowed something like this because it was such a clear violation. But when people would turn their back to it, the players at the table in these 5-10 games, everybody would go all in, and like everybody but one person would muck, and then they would get 1,000. It was 10-handed at the time. Then they would do it with the next person until everybody had 1,000 at the table, and they could actually play the game that way. And stuff like that is just crazy when you think about where poker was. In Florida, it actually started with a $10 max pot that was allowed, that they started with. And I have people that I've worked with that I'm friendly with who talked about the days of the 25-cent poker $10 max pot. And they were hoping to get 50 cents tossed their way as they were dealing. Florida it's got its own history and journey. D1 Key says, I wish more casino games were skill-based like poker and player versus player rather than player versus house. Boy, is there a lot of truth to that. I have spent hours and hours of my life trying to come up with the variant for that. You're right. So casinos aren't really incentivized to do things like that, unfortunately, because casinos are going to make... I talked about this a few weeks ago on here. You know, somebody was asking me why Encore Boston and one other property still hadn't reintroduced poker, but they'd opened the other parts of the casino. It's because poker makes less than 5% of the revenue of the property, and sometimes it's way less than that too. You know, table games and slots make the most of the money for a casino, so they don't have as much incentive to do that with poker. It's the same thing with this. Casinos aren't going to put their time and energy into coming up with a player versus player game because they make more money off of player versus house games. The player versus house games. Every single player versus house game, it's basically like they have a house advantage that's built into the game. It needs to be so great that the table can hold enough money that's played and bought in on the table to make it so that they choose to put that on the gaming floor, right? So people have to want to play it, and it has to have a high enough hold percentage. I'm sort of talking casino logic. Well, poker is a different thing, right? Poker's player versus player. The casino takes money out of each pot, or they take a amount per hour per player to be there, and they don't make nearly as much money. And so it's up to us to come up with these other solutions, right? And it has to be popular enough that the casino has no choice to include it. Or maybe whatever this other player versus player game is could be something that like instead of having a card room, you could have a whatever this game would be room. But make it happen because people love stuff like this, as you can tell with poker. Absolutely. You said I've thought about how to make blackjack PvP player versus player, and it doesn't really work. Correct. There are... Let me see. Are there video games like this? I mean, online poker is a video game, I suppose, but it's tough because part of... All right, what are the... Here, this is for anybody that wants to come up with this. Think about it. By the way, I am an entrepreneur at heart and in practice, so I'm always open to talking about stuff like this and giving feedback. Send me an email if you have something that you want to run by me in order to get feedback. I'm putting my email here like I sometimes do. But yeah, so what are the elements of poker that would have to probably be in there in order for people to want to play whatever this game is that you're hypothetically talking about that's player versus player? Because there is really only this one card game that's player versus player, and it's called poker. And I will say this, there's all these different variants of it, right? But what are the elements? The elements are... where to start? There has to be a skill-based competition. There has to be enough variety. for a person to learn that it keeps it fun and fresh and interesting, but not so much that it's impossible to wrap your head around. It has to, this is important, it has to be more than 2 people. So one of the great things about poker is it works for 2 people, and it also works for 10, right? You can have 10 at a table. You can have groups of 10, which is a tournament, or 9, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. It has to have there be a short-term reward where luck is a factor in the short term, and a long-term reward where if you're good at this skill game over time, your wins will have a positive expected value and you will be able to beat the rake is really the right thing there. Something like that would be really cool. Tony Blue says, how hard is it to get a job into high-end casinos? The easiest path to get a job at a place like the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, or any other high-end casino, and I assume you're talking about as a poker dealer, so I'm going to answer it for a poker dealer. Tony, if you want to know for any other specific position, I will do my best to talk to you about the path that I'm aware of in order to get there. As a poker dealer, in order to get a job at a high-end casino, you have 2 typical paths. Path number 1, get trained, pass an audition at a card room somewhere or casino poker room somewhere that's easier to get your foot in the door because they don't have as many games or they have a tougher time getting dealers. Get your reps in for at least 6 months, get really good, then you go audition at the next available time that the poker room has where they're hiring. I'm going to tell you this, okay? Almost never have I ever heard of a even high-end casino doing a resume check on somebody. So if you've been dealing for 1 year and they have a 2-year requirement, you can just tell them that you've been dealing for 2 years. I mean, I'm just going to say it. It's just, you still have to pass the audition. That's the key, right? That's why it doesn't actually matter. You still have to go and prove it. So if you are somebody who's able to get really good, and it says you need 2 years experience as a dealer, if you're able to get really good in 1 year, working at some card room somewhere, get all your skills up, and you're dealing all the games that they need you to deal in order to pass the audition, then you can go audition with them, and they're probably going to hire you, okay? Another way to do this would be to deal 6 to 12 months at some poker room. Now, if you're trying to get in the Hard Rock in Hollywood, you're going to have to do this method instead. 6 to 12 months at a regular poker room after learning how to deal past an audition. Then you probably got to go over to the World Series. You got to train yourself on those mixed games and then ship yourself over to the World Series or try to be a circuit dealer in order to get your skills up to be able to work at a room that spreads all the games. I mean, the way that I look at it is, you could take my course. So if you're a good dealer, you could probably take my course and then you'd have to practice at home and you might be able to pass the audition at like the Hard Rock Hollywood or a high-end casino that has these games. It's just, you're almost definitely going to get it with no problem if you spend the 6 weeks or whatever it is at the World Series after doing that same training, because then you're really going to come out of that with those skills. So that's one way to get there, would be go to school or take my course, pass an audition in a poker room, work there at a poker room that doesn't have as much competition, work there for 6 to 12 months or a little bit longer if you want, until your skills are really good, and then go audition at the high-end casino. Or if they have games that they're going to audition you on that are really high level and you don't know, you could then get my bonus mixed game course. If you're good at learning through videos, you're fine. You'll be able to do it. Just practice at home. Or go and learn how to do those games as well and go over to like the World Series and really hone your skills over 6 weeks. Something like that is a good path. The other possible path is, I know that the Hard Rock does this in Hollywood. You can get your foot in the door by starting out in their school. So they offer, even the high-end rooms sometimes will offer a 8-week, usually, sometimes even longer, school with somebody who is an experienced trainer in-house. And you might have to start out as a brush sometimes and a dealer sometimes before you get to be a dealer full-time. But they do offer, a lot of the times the high-end rooms will actually offer their own schools. So you can ask about that. I know that like in the Seminoles, in order to get in that school, I think you have to actually already be an employee at Seminole though. And I'm speaking really a lot about Seminole. It's just me using them as an example. There's plenty of high-end good rooms that have similar makeups. I'm using a specific example to give perspective. I'm not trying to say that's how it's done everywhere, but casino Pokemon. But yeah, that's probably your best path to get into a high-end casino is either go through their specific training and crush it, or get your foot in the door somewhere else first, spend some time working somewhere else first, to the point where you're going to stand out in the audition is really the point, right? If you've been dealing for a year and you've already passed an audition in order to get that job, and you're still at that job and you're fresh and you go audition somewhere else, it's not going to be hard to pass an audition because you're dealing every day. Like, it's just, it should be pretty easy. But you still got to learn their culture in advance. You got to get a sense of what they're looking for, and yeah, there's that. Let's see. D1 Key says, I would like for it to be anyone can play. Like, the best part about poker is that anyone can play regardless of age, physical ability. That's true. That's another factor. This is in relation to the conversation I was just having about what else could be created that's like poker, that's player versus player skill game. Dang, Mark, you definitely thought about this the exact way I have. Yeah. A way for skilled player to beat the rake. The game has to be beatable. Yep. I've thought about crazy eights. Interesting. Gigi says simple poker, 5-card draw. Scratch that. Casino Pokemon. Oh, that's the context. Michael said casino Pokemon or MTG tables. MTG. I feel like I should know what that means. I'm like, is this Magic the Gathering? Gotcha. Yeah, I was sort of thinking like Hearthstone or something like that, but I feel like there's a certain pace with poker where you have decision time, but also it's not super slow. Like Magic the Gathering is really good head on 1 versus 1. I actually, you know what? I've never played Magic the Gathering. I've played Hearthstone, which is another video game. Blizzard makes this one, and I played a lot of Hearthstone where it's 1-on-1. I don't actually know if that would translate to multiplayer. Hold on. Hearthstone has an 8-player battlegrounds, but I feel like the skill difference doesn't provide. So here's a problem with these games. If you're bad, you're never gonna win. Yeah. If you're bad, you're never gonna win. That's a problem with this. So if you're bad, you have to win sometimes in order to make a good game like what you're talking about. And it has to be frequent enough where a bad player can show up and have like crush it one day. That's part of the beauty of poker. It's part of why this is so hard to recreate. But it would be fun to do a live stream where I schedule it in advance and everybody knows that the entire live stream is going to be like, maybe I'll do a Zoom or something like that. I'd have to prepare something for this. That's why I'm not just saying, hey, I'm going to schedule this. I'd have to prepare starting points for this conversation. But if I were to invite people like yourself, actually, let me say this. If you're watching right now and you want to be a part of a live stream on True Poker Dealer where you're actually in front of your computer and a camera and we're Zooming, so I create a Zoom where everybody can jump in that wants to be a part of this to brainstorm this thing out, send me an email saying that you'd like to be interested. If I get enough people, then maybe that'll be a live stream we do where we talk about what other things could be made that check the boxes that poker checks for player versus player skill game, where bad players can still win and all that stuff. I put my email there, and I love that you're saying yes, me, this guy. Just shoot me an email, and I'll go and collect all the emails, and if there's enough people, we'll make it happen. I think that would be a very fun, intelligent conversation, and I would also have to prepare for that by coming up with some possible conversation directions that are much more thought out than what we've talked about here, right? Because then the conversation can actually be applied to potentially creating something. Me the Watch, or Meth Watch. May you briefly review how to frame the board at end of a Texas Holdem hand? That is the parlance you used. Perhaps they call it something else. Thanks again for the great content. Poker is so fast. Like it doesn't work if it takes 2 hours to play. Yep. Yeah, you have to be able to jump in and out. Okay, so how to frame the board at the end of a Texas Holdem hand. So in my course, I'm going to answer you, and I also want to just highlight this. In my course, I go over all of this in a video called The Showdown that has a ton of detail, and watching that video will create all the comfort that you're asking for. And you can join my channel here on YouTube in order to get access to that. That being said, the short answer to what you're talking about is, so to frame the board at the end of a Texas Holdem hand, you're going to wait for a player to actually table their hand, and you are going to, let me get rid of this graphic, I don't want it here anymore. You are going to look at their hand, look at the board, and determine which cards from their hand play and which cards from the board play. Okay, depending on what the game is. You know, if it's Omaha, it's going to be 2 from the hand, 3 from the board. If it's Texas Holdem, it could be the entire board, or it could be 1 card from the hand, or it could be 2 cards from the hand. Then what you do is you pull down, in order to frame, you pull down the 2 cards that are not a part of the hand using the player's hand that was tabled. You pull them down only about halfway, so I got a deck right here. So let's say that these 3 cards are on the board. Now they're going to all be, I'll do it with 2 cards, okay? So these 2 cards are on the board. You pull it down about that much, so it's about halfway, okay? Some people frame it by putting it all the way down. No, you put it about halfway. And you do that with all the cards. The ones that go down are the ones that are not a part of the 5-card hand. The ones that are up are the ones that are a part of the 5-card hand. And you could also push the 3 up, or you could push 4 up. It's just, I like to do whatever's simpler, right? So if it's 4 cards from the board and 1 from the hand, I'm going to just pull 1 down that doesn't play. And then you do announce what the hand is. And you're only, in an audition, you might want to frame every single hand. But in a traditional game of poker, if multiple people table their hand, unless there's some reason that you need to be clear about who wins beyond just framing it and saying what the winning hand is, you only need to do this for the winning hand, is what I'm trying to say. So you would just pick the one winning hand there. Perhaps they call it something else. Let me see. Frame the board, frame the winning hand is the right language, by the way. Me the Watch, did that accomplish what you were looking for in terms of how to do it? You wait until the player tables it. Tabling it is they must put their cards face up on the table. They can't still be holding them where you can see them. It's not tabled until it's actually flat, face up on the table. And that is, once that moment happens, what's going on here? I'm just fixing the focus here. Once that moment happens is when you frame it. Let's see. Tony says, hello Mark, thank you for your useful content. Sorry my English is bad. French here. I would ask you, ... and I look down. I had a great training formation almost a year ago, interrupted by COVID. Now I'm having my first audition and I'm stressed, like especially in poker, because I'm more like a table games guy. And during the training, they put on very much traps that scared me. How should I manage? So it sounds like your audition is coming soon, and maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's today, maybe it's next week, or maybe you just know that it's going to come up soon. The thing that I really want to say, that if you're a table games dealer, then you know that your mechanics are probably going to be good, okay? When it comes to poker, there are some people that do auditions that will try to, what they call, take shots at you to try to catch you. The real answer is you have to be familiar with what you're doing as a dealer, and you have to be able to keep up with what's on the table, and you have to be, you sort of have to hope that the auditioner is a reasonable person and they're not taking shots that are impossible for you. So like, if somebody was new at auditioning and just really wanted to test dealers and just like, while somebody's breaking down a complicated all-in over here, it's possible that somebody could take $200 off of their stack over on the other side of the table to try to get you. But my experience is nobody as an auditioner is going to do that, because that shot that they're taking at you is way too difficult to expect somebody that's breaking it all in bet down to do. And at the same time, there is this like expectation you should be able to do it. Here's what I would say to you. Freshen up your skills, refresh yourself by finding some way for you to be in front of some kind of a poker dealing setup and get some practice in just dealing out hands. Okay, create that comfort for yourself. If it's been a long time and you never really used the skill, there's no real other way to do this than to recreate that for yourself. Now, you can do an audition with me. If you send me an email, we can set up, it is a paid audition, it's not free, but you can set that up with me, and then we'll record the video and I can give you feedback throughout it, and then you can go like look at it, and that'll take a little bit of the pressure off sometimes. But I think the audition in most situations where they take a lot of shots at you while you're in school, I should have led with this, honestly. Most of the time, they're not going to do that much in the audition. It's going to be the more basic stuff. So they probably will take a shot at you where one person, let me see, one person says 20, in a 1-2 no limit game, one person says 20, they throw out 30, right? Well, you have to make sure that it's 20. That's a reasonable shot to take at you. And you should just be making sure. So one way to handle that is you verify every bet. So as a dealer, you are supposed to do this. You're supposed to verify every single bet that goes into the pot. So if a player throws in the wrong amount and they set a different amount, you are supposed to know that you're supposed to just fix that. And I have to do that every day that I deal, literally. So they'd be testing you by taking that shot because that happens all the time, and they need to know that you're going to get it right. Another thing that they might do is they might have a player say call and then push their whole stack in. Well, that's not an all-in, and you need to know that. So if they're taking shots like that, I mean, you're going to pass the audition if you know what you're doing, and you're not going to pass it if you don't. But in school, so you guys might not know this, and I don't do this in mine because I'm not actually there with you. In poker dealing schools, a lot of the times, the trainers or the secondary trainers, which they sometimes have, are going to take very difficult shots at you while you're in the box. It's so that you can learn more. It ends up making the dealers feel like they're terrible. So there's a downside to that puts a lot of pressure on them, and then it makes you really nervous. If you've never done an audition, you sort of probably feel like that's what's coming. My experience is, though, those types of shots that they're taking that really challenge you are probably not going to be what they test you at, unless the poker room is one of these high-end, really tough to get into rooms, and then they're going to just make sure that you're excellent when you get in there. So if the poker room that you're thinking about going to is going to be a very high-end room, you might run into something like that, honestly. But for the most part, you're probably looking at not as much of that as you're afraid of, if that's just been the culture of the school. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they tell you they're going to challenge the heck out of you. Also, I noticed that dealer schools are not always consistent in their audition. They, like, the really good dealers, the ones that they've been working with that have really, really excelled in the class, they're probably going to give that person a harder audition, expecting that they're going to pass it, and also giving them a chance to really stand out. Somebody else, they might give them closer to a minimum audition to pass, something that they can handle. I mean, I don't know in terms of that. Tony says, thank you very much for the advice. It comforts me to know that they maybe won't take so much shots in the audition because they did it all the time in the trainings. Yeah, they still might. It's just, they know how nerve-wracking it is in an audition. They also need to make sure that their brand is properly represented, though. So it could go either way. But, I mean, yeah, I would say just be prepared, right? Like, that's the best way to manage. Just get time on the table and practice. Let's see. Gigi says, go play some live poker, Tony. Ooh, I love that advice. Yes, buy in small and watch and listen to the dealers as they work. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for saying that, Gigi. I find that, one of the huge advantages of having this YouTube channel and doing stuff like this live, right? I could polish this content later, right? But I'd miss out on stuff like what Gigi just did, which is give perspective that I forget about in the moment. Thank you for that comment very much. Let me see. Methwatch says, thanks, Mark. Perfect. Absolutely. Appreciate it. Um, I'm glad that I was able to, without actually having a table here, get you what you needed. That makes me happy too. Ooh, I'm shaking my legs and the whole monitor is shaking too. I find that whenever I take a sip of water, people jump off the stream. It's really an interesting dynamic. Maybe I just should go off the screen and take a sip of water. Something that I have on my screen while I'm doing this is it tells me how many concurrent viewers there are in the moment at any given time, although I find it's not always accurate. It also tells me the average watch time, number of playbacks. I'm a big supporter of being a YouTuber. All right, so I've gotten through these. Thanks again for this answer, Mark, and Gigi. Absolutely appreciate you, Tony. So, D1 Key says this was a ton of fun. It's so fun to find a community of people that think and like the same stuff you do. Yes. So being a YouTuber in general, I have learned. It took a lot of work for me to be an authentic person in general, but if anyone that's watching this is willing to be your real self, which sometimes it takes years to even figure out who that is, right? Be your real self and put yourself out there publicly for something on a platform like YouTube, you end up attracting similar people and you end up meeting people that genuinely you would enjoy spending time with. There's a video, I'm going to pull this up actually on YouTube, that this video did help me transition to this, and it's got nothing to do with poker, but I guarantee you that about half the people that watch this are just like, that is something that's changed me forever. My brother watched this video and he broke up with his girlfriend of 5 years, moved from Massachusetts to California, and literally created the life that he wanted. And I'm going to share this video. Let me see, what's it called? It has nothing to do with poker, but if you are thinking about making a YouTube channel, this is absolutely for you. So hold on. It's super random. It's just like such a let me see. All right, so where is this? I'm gonna, no, window capture right here. I wanna share this video because I think this is cool. All right. I might have this bit blocked, yeah. So I gotta do this. There we go, and this. Excuse me. Oof. This is super random. I acknowledge that it's super random. All right, here's the video. So I'm gonna move myself up, and we'll move this over. So this right here is from 2013. No, this is from way before then. I think this was from the mid 2000s. Frank Kern is a online marketer, and he's very good at what he does. Move myself over a little. And this is a historic core influence talk. It's a seminar, and it's like 2 hours long. And he's literally not. I'll show you a little bit of what this is like. He's literally just being himself in a seminar, and he's communicating something that I ended up referring to this. Blythe, someone I worked with in casinos, you're the one that showed me this. Thank you so much. He's talking about your perfect average day. All right, there's the punchline of this. He teaches this whole thing, and he trained me how to think about my perfect average day, which the point of all of this is it helped teach me how to be authentic and think about what I actually want in my life. And it's amazing. But he's the one that I got even that statement that I made from about here, let me put the link in here. I have no idea if you guys are going to watch this, but it's awesome. So he's the one that he helped me realize, because I watched this after I started True Poker Dealer before, and when I used to work in the casino industry when I was younger, I was being somebody that I thought I was supposed to be. And in poker rooms and in casinos, they train you, guest service is often trained to be a particular person, not necessarily who you really are. And he taught me that even with this YouTube channel or anything that I do in life, the more I really am myself, the more the people that I meet as a result of that are going to be people who I want to spend time with. And it wasn't always like that, being the person I projected. You end up attracting whatever you project is a lot of it. But it's a really cool exercise. He teaches you how to do the whole exercise. And, I feel a little bit shy sharing that, honestly. because it's easy to judge somebody for the stuff that they recommend, I guess, but I'm still gonna do it. That's part of how I like to show up. So I super recommend that video though. Like I said, learning what your perfect average day is and going through that exercise, which Frank Kern does not say this in this video, but he says this in another place. He actually got this whole concept from a book by I want to say Napoleon Hill, the guy that wrote Think and Grow Rich, which is a well-known book from like 85 years ago or something. And Think and Grow Rich, like the author of that is the one that originally created this whole concept that Frank Kern explains incredibly well in this video. So Tony says fundamental. Oh, Hit Girl says, I work now during the live streams and I'm going to miss them from now on. Oh, I am sad to hear that. I love having you here. I do have a master plan to change to a weekend day, but it's like I sort of teased that a few times that I was going to do a live stream on a weekend day moving forward, and I haven't done it still. And so I'm going to shut up and let my actions speak for myself at some point. I feel like Saturday or Sunday would be a better day in general for the people who enjoy watching this to be available for it, but we'll see. Let's see. Oh, by the way, if you do watch that Frank Kern historic core influence talk about the perfect average day, I would recommend being okay with the fact that it sort of starts off slow. There's time that you're going to be watching it where you're just like, it's sort of going slow. I'm acknowledging that totally. It still does what I said it does. Jason says, I appreciate you sharing your authentic thoughts and ideas about poker and life in general. It's always refreshing. Thank you for saying that. I enjoy encouragement very much. One of the things that I've enjoyed the most about this project is sort of bringing authenticity to YouTube. I feel like authenticity is the thing that people really want most of the time. Yeah, I mean, the fact that I understand this industry is incredibly important to this too. But there's a guy, a philosopher, Naval Ravikant, who says the way to beat competition, right? So right now I'm somebody that is on YouTube that teaches people to be poker dealers. And I am somebody who, if somebody else wanted to try and do the same thing, they might be competition, right? But the way to beat competition is with authenticity. Meaning, if somebody else comes along and does what I'm doing, they're going to do it their way. They're not going to be me, right? Like, I'm me and you guys are enjoying interacting with me, and that's a valuable thing. Me being the way that I am and the way that I communicate, it creates a certain connection, and it also creates yes, someone else can teach you how to deal poker, but they can't do it the way I do it, right? Because I'm me. And it's a really cool concept that you can actually beat competition with authenticity. I love it the more that I think about it. Shout out to Naval Ravikant, who I don't know him in person. He's somebody who's just multi-millionaire angel investor guy who's built, I think he created AngelList, and I remember seeing his net worth was in like the 60 million range. He has a book that is a free book that you can get, like the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, and that's on my list of amazing books personally. And I don't read a lot, by the way. Like, I do read, but I don't just sit down with a book all the time because it has to really capture me in order to do it. I have a Trello list with all of the books that have changed me, and those are ones I super recommend. But this one made that list, and if I'm reading a book, this is what I'm trying to tell you. If I read a book, it's probably really good because I'm very selective about what I'll spend my time doing like that. D1 Keys says, I try to replace things that I see dealers do, and one of them is how they bring the flop and snap the cards on turn and river, but I've had a tough time replicating it. I think I said replace, but I meant to say I try to imitate or replicate. Snap the cards down. If that doesn't make sense, I get that it's hard for me to explain it. No, it does. It's like right there, right? You heard it? Here, let me... This is... All right, I'm going to go over here with the camera. and sort of get this angle. And let me try to show this right now. Got my mouse pad here, so I've got the card. So you bring the card down, and you want to get a little bend to it, and then let go, right? So it's, instead of just putting the card down, you have to actually put it at that angle where it snaps. So it's the corner here that's up, and you put it down, and you just do it in a motion where it's sort of like that. And the more the card that you're able to bend, the more snap you get. I think that's what you're talking about. Personally, I actually like to bring the turn. I like a little snap and then sliding it up to its spot. So I don't like snapping it into its place. I think the presentation of putting it here and sliding it up is nice. But if you want to snap it into place, that's what you're doing. You're gonna, when you put the card down at an angle, and then you just sort of, you create that pressure with your index finger versus your thumb, and then you're gonna like slide your index finger up the card to release it. So you slide it up. And that said, it definitely puts more wear and tear on the cards, which is something that I would say maybe is a bad thing. Let me see if I can get the camera back to where I had it close. But yeah, is that what you're talking about? Oh, you said thank you. Hey, you're welcome. Let's see. This is why I say, like, this is one of the things that I like providing for people, which is just access to somebody who has experience with a lot of this stuff in the industry. Otherwise, you got to make friends with someone, and then they have to be willing to spend their time with you and like have the materials around you, like, you know. Let's see. Jason says, yeah, being relatable is key to being a good teacher, and it's easiest to be relatable when you're being yourself. I totally agree with that. Jason says that snap is fancy, but it's definitely not necessary. The important thing to do is promptly deal the card to the table. I agree with that too. Yeah, that makes sense, but I just love the presentation of it. So we're talking about authenticity, right? Like, as someone who's a dealer, as long as you're not doing anything that the poker room has a problem with, do stuff that's a little bit fancy, that is within the rules, and best brings out your personality. Like, I love that personally too. I keep sort of thinking to myself, one day, and I've done this in a poker room before, and one day I want to, when it's like a checked flop all the way through, check turn all the way through, check river all the way through, I definitely want to do the thing. Here, I should put a cut card on the bottom of this. I want to do the thing where I just, one time I bring the river just by taking the card, flipping it over, throwing it up in the air, catching it on the back of the deck, and then bringing it down. But it's like, don't do that, because you have to be 100% sure that you're going to do it properly. And for me, I would want to actually practice with the cards of the room, like at Texas Card House, if I'm ever going to do that there. And you can certainly get yourself in trouble. But so there's snapping the card down, which is okay, and then there's stuff like that, which, I mean, you can lose your job over stuff like that. I still fantasize about doing something like that. I know that I have the skill to do it. I was joking around with the GM one day in their office, and we challenged each other to take a card, throw it up in the air, and catch it on the deck behind our back. I was really close. I was pretty confident I was going to do it, but I did not succeed. Let's see. And Jason says, those little touches are nice. Yeah, Gigi says, I had a guy in the 6 seat playing against the 1 seat. When the hand was over, he asked me to not flip the board cards too early, giving the 1 seat an earlier glimpse than him. I'm trying to think of how that plays out. I mean, I understand that when you go like this, there's a split second that the 1 seat can see it first. But, I mean, well, I will say this, actually. I'm not saying that Gigi did this, but I'm going to speak to the situation and tell you guys something I've seen. This is more stuff I've seen in dealer school than in an actual casino, but I have seen dealers in casinos, even in poker rooms that I've worked at, that I've had to comment on over the years in my supervising days, where sometimes what a dealer does, and it's probably been 8 years since I've had to train this with somebody, so I forgot about it. Sometimes what a dealer does is they're interested in the hand themselves. Again, I'm not saying that you did this, Gigi, but they're interested in the hand themselves, and they don't just bring the card. They bring the card and look at it and then put the card down. And I have had to train at least 2 dealers over the years to not do that. And it's something that you get with people who are poker players first and poker players first and poker dealers second. They're just interested in what the card is. So they're more interested in knowing what the card is than putting the card out. So if that coincidentally is what the player was talking about, then I would agree with them. If not, and they just like didn't like the fact that the player could over here could see the card first, I don't know, but yeah, you never want to, when you're bringing a turn or a river, you never want to pause at all here. It should just be one motion and out every single time. Gigi says, yeah, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I thanked her for pointing it out, but seemed a little nitty. I mean, yeah, depending on exactly what happened, you seem highly competent. I mean, the advice that you give is on point, stuff like that. So I have a really difficult time picturing that being the thing that you were doing, the way that I described it very slowly. But, I mean, players also regularly give dealers feedback about what they should be doing without having any idea what's true. And the dealer's an easy target for a frustrated human to throw their frustration, right? So when somebody is feeling negative emotions and they're at a poker table, they know they can't direct any of that negativity toward the other players verbally, because those are just people that are there that can fire right back at them. But the dealer doesn't have that same ability. So a lot of the time, a person who's just frustrated in a moment, whether it's related to what's going on at the table or not, will, and this happens constantly, this is why I was talking about learning to be human and interacting with people and all this stuff, they will fire at the dealer whatever is convenient to fire, right? It's, I'm annoyed, make me less annoyed, but they're being specific. And that easily could have been what happened as well. Jason says, at D1 Keys, and once you've got a lot of practice and you can start developing your own personal touches as well. Yep, totally true. Tony says, LOL. D1 Key says, not to advertise another channel, but here is a good example of what I mean. So I think D1 Keys, you probably put a link in there. I believe YouTube only allows me to put links in there so it's not showing up for us because they have had problems with people advertising in live streams and stuff like that. So say the name of the channel and then people will be able to go check it out. But if you put a link there, then they won't be able to see it. I can't see the link that you put, for example. I think that's what happened. Gigi said, I've been sworn at in 11 different languages. Welcome to being a poker dealer. Last week, I talked about that situation with the challenging poker player at my table who was giving me a hard time. And I thanked my mom for teaching me how to be around confrontation, right? Yes, being sworn at in 11 different languages is something that all poker dealers are like, yeah, me too. I haven't ever thought to count the number of languages, and I haven't ever thought to ask what the words that have been spoken toward me meant, but I'm sure that 11 is ballpark for me as well, possibly higher. Jason says, sometimes as a dealer, you just have to accept that you'll be a negativity sponge from some players. Yeah, and I sort of try to use a perspective approach for myself to help with that too. I think I said this last week when I was talking about this example. The player was quartered in a hand, and he was upset that another player at the table basically said something that he considered to be stupid, that I had to keep the attention on the fact that he got quartered, basically, right? Like the player was like, wait, how come this player doesn't win the whole thing? How come this guy gets a quarter of it? Which is needling this guy unintentionally, right? And he was telling me, like, just push the pot. Like, what are you explaining it to him for? And I had to tell him, like, I mean, when cards are tabled, card speak means that if anybody at the table sees something that's being done improperly, they have the responsibility to speak up, which also means, he didn't want to hear it, which also means that as the dealer, if somebody says they think someone else wins, I have to actually explain why they don't. Well, this player started coming at me. And in my head, I was not thinking about the things that he was saying only. I was also thinking about what caused him to feel frustration in his life, right? It's like gaining the perspective that you just have to remember sometimes you don't know what it's like to be somebody else that you're sort of dealing to at a poker table. And it helps take a lot of the edge off for me when I think like, okay, this player's not being receptive to my answer, right? They brought something up to me, I'm explaining to them what the answer is, and they're not being receptive to that. Well, what does that mean? That probably means on some level that it's not about what they're saying. Okay, well, what could it be about? This person's frustrated. Maybe they've lost a lot of money lately and they just don't have an outlet for it at the table. Like a lot of people that are playing poker, their only outlet to feel better is winning. And if they're losing, it gets even worse. So they have this frustration feeling sometimes in life or at the table. And then they're tilted and they're playing at the table. Tilting makes it even less likely to win. The only thing that makes them feel any type of better, and it doesn't even make them feel better, is winning. And if they're losing, they just need somewhere to send it. So being able to picture stuff like that is really valuable as a coping mechanism for yourself at the table and being able to navigate that stuff. So we are hitting, I just hit 2 hours. It's a little bit long for me. And I am going to start winding it down, but I'm happy to stick around for a little bit, just giving you guys a heads up. I'm going to phase this out, and once we run out of questions and comments to go through, I'll probably end it. But let's see what else you guys got right before we end. Gigi says, small stakes limit games are good places to practice. That's definitely true. It's both good places to practice dealing, and it's also good places to practice your interactions with people. I'm actually curious, is that what you meant when you said that? Was there a specific thing you were talking about practicing? Did I miss a comment maybe? I think you're talking about in general, just to get your skills up, which is totally true. Jason says, important to just not take it personally. It comes with the territory. Yeah, but you have to have a way to do that, which is what I was trying to offer, right? Like, well, so yes, and you have to have a way to do that. Some people have that built in. Most of the people who are good at not taking it personally didn't learn it in the poker room, right? It's their life experiences have taught them a way to not take it personally. I try to just empathize with their feelings. Poker can be emotionally traumatic for some. Haha. Right. So that is along the lines of what I'm trying to say. I'm sort of trying to feel what it's like to be them and almost like build a path from what might have happened where it just takes the edge off. It's like, oh, it's not about me, right? Like this person. But there's the example that I gave. The player was making the whole table uncomfortable with the level of confrontation that they brought in that moment. Nobody talked. This was the first hand that I was there. I was there for 30 minutes. Nobody talked after that at all. And it's like, that's a bad thing for the room too. So I was sort of in that territory in my head, like, okay, if this continues, then I do need to address it because it is going to lose us players. It didn't continue, but it will continue one day if this player keeps coming back, and they will. So, it's like there's a lot to it. But yeah, in order to not take it personally as a dealer, the dealer has to have a method that they use, and not everybody's empathetic. I feel like I have the ability to feel what other people feel to a degree. I don't know how accurate it is all the time, but it's a method, right? And it's sort of what Jason's talking about. Jason also has the ability to feel what other people feel, and it sort of helps give perspective and all that stuff. There's a lot of different coping methods to give yourself thicker skin. Some dealers are very good at understanding that it's almost never actually about what's being talked about, and it's always about turning the negative energy into a positive, like fun energy. Some people do it with entertainment. Some people do it with smiling and conversation. I have had multiple women who have been dealing who've done it with motherly vibes. That they're just really good at that. And I actually teach in my course let me see how to phrase this properly. I teach in my course to find the parts of yourself that are very likable and that you enjoy going to naturally, like authentically, in your interactions with people in your regular life, the ones that you're close with. Find those parts of yourself, and if you can pull that through you as a poker dealer and use that in your interactions with the players in those difficult situations, to create whatever you need in the moment, it can be really valuable for you to be able to do that. Fanis says, what if players are negative because I suck? I'm a new dealer with minimum training. I empathize with them for sure. So that is an awesome question. And I really like the humility in that. So it's really relatable, first of all, because anybody who's a new dealer sucks. It just is what it is. Like, I can think of maybe 2 dealers in the entire time that I've worked in poker who have been awesome out of school, and I wasn't one of them. I was pretty good, but it's like literally 2 dealers is all I can think of that were completely awesome out of school. So because of that, every single dealer that's new sucks. So what do you do if players give you a hard time because of that? So you fail a lot is the honest answer. In those situations, having a call the floor mentality whenever a player wants to give you feedback about something is going to help you the most. And just keep working on training your habits to the point where you get better and better. It's like if I'm dealing and a player tells me like you shouldn't be doing that, okay, I'm going to respond to them and turn it into a conversation, but I'm also experienced. If a player tells me that I shouldn't be doing that and I'm new, you don't want to tattle on them, right? You offer to the player, would you like me to call a floor? And you just say it very honestly and humbly. Like, would you like me to get a supervisor? And then from there, they'll say what they want to say. So they might say, no, I just want you to know that you have to do this. And you tell them, okay, I appreciate the feedback. I'm new. I'll bring it up with my floor after this, or something like that, or on my next break or something like that. And you can also offer to get a supervisor over, because when you're new, maybe you did make a mistake. Maybe it does have an impact on the game. Maybe you're not aware of it. Maybe there's something like that. So instead of just calling the floor and making them feel like you're a problem, right? Because that's what it would feel like if it doesn't really warrant it. If you offer to get a supervisor, well, now they feel like they're at least going to get taken care of here if it's actually about the thing that they're talking about. So that's sort of the approach that I would take with that. And at the same time, a lot of poker players just don't give a F about you or your feelings if you're new. But there's also a lot of poker players that are like, yeah, I get it, you know. So let's see, there's that. Jason, in response to this, said, a trick I learned in dealing with enraged people is to calmly state you sound angry. It put a label on their emotions and it validates them. It can also help them realize how they're sounding. Here's my advice. Don't address that negativity with apologies, but rather gratitude. Instead of, I'm sorry I suck, try, thank you for being patient while I improve. So that's excellent advice. Something that is known in most casinos, and I want to tell you guys right now, is you never use the word I'm sorry as a dealer. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. It implies the wrong thing. Saying that you're sorry as a dealer now look, if someone's family passed away, that's different, right? But saying I'm sorry, it implies that you did the wrong thing, and that's not okay. But we know in poker that dealers make mistakes, and appreciation. So the thing that Jason just said, again, is another example of how valuable it is to have a YouTube channel where it's not just my feedback and responses, because this is really valuable. Giving, what is it you said? Showing gratitude. Instead of saying, I'm sorry I suck, thank you for being patient while I improve. Well, thank you for that feedback is very valuable. Thank you for being patient while I improve could actually create something. It's better than, I'm sorry I suck, but it's also implying that they hired you before that they should have. So I don't know that I would exactly say that, but the sentiment behind it is really on point, right? Like, I appreciate your patience is important. And something that I was trying to say was like, I care about the fact you're giving me this feedback. Would you like a supervisor to get this handled right away? And also I tried to communicate to them, like, I'm going to bring this up with my supervisor after. Thanks for bringing it to my attention, something like that. It's been a long time since I've been a new dealer. Also, when I started dealing, I was in a small 3-table poker room in Washington State, and the supervising staff was literally there for every single thing that happened like this. So it was automatically going to be a conversation after the table, which was actually nice, right? Like this, if you're in a room where the supervisors are there while it's happening, they're giving you that support. So the situation is going to be handled, and also they're there to give you the training and the correction after the fact. In this case, a player is bringing something to your attention. So there's a difference though. If it's something simple that you can just make the adjustment and you're like, I think they're right, well, that's great feedback, and you don't need to offer them for them to call a floor. But sometimes the conversation we were having before is they're just taking their day out at you, right? They're just upset. They're just like going at someone, and the dealer ends up being the target, and it's not even about the thing that you're talking about. If that's the case, then I would offer the would you like me to get a floor type of thing. And speaking of authenticity, the more you actually care, the better, and the more that you appear to be genuine, the better. In this case too, being genuine is a great diffuser. Telling a player you sound angry, I read that comment, and I'm trying to think of. I understand the psychology behind it. I love this conversation, so thank you for that comment for sure. Definitely has value, and it's true. You sound angry. I'm deciding right now if this is slightly over the line, though. That's what I'm trying to decide. I will say this: if your poker room promotes labeling, like in a calm state, the calmness is great, by the way. If your poker room promotes this, actually, you know what? Something I want to say is, so here's the tactic, right? Jason said, calmly stating you sound angry, right? If you learn to say you sound angry and you forget about the calm part, oh man, could that be bad. All right, that's the thing that I was afraid of as I was thinking about this just now. So if you do say that incredibly calmly, which can be hard in the moment, not everybody's able to be calm in the moment. If you can say that incredibly calmly, I like that. If it's at all not calm, it can be bad. I would probably, and the tough part about all this, for those that don't know, who don't deal, you have to do this while still dealing the game. Ooh, there's a lot going on. Being able to think on this level is something that you can achieve as a poker dealer after you've trained most of your habits, and a lot of it's automatic, is the unfortunate reality. So in that moment, it's going to be hard for a new dealer to even be able to think on this level. I say experiment with things that you feel comfortable experimenting with, and I definitely appreciate that advice. Jason, I'm gonna jump to the rest of the Jason comments real quick. Regarding never saying I'm sorry, that's spot on, and for the reasons you stated. And regarding you sound angry, that's maybe less acceptable to card rooms, but can be useful in many other circumstances. It's a life skill for sure. That part I totally agree with. If you're having an argument with a significant other or something like that, that's what I was actually picturing that coming from, probably. And yeah, it does have to be super calmly. Hit Girl says, woohoo, I'm done work, 6 p.m. here. How about we talk for 2 more hours? Oh gosh, I already made my sort of announcement that I'm at my max. Yes, maybe I can sense your frustration. Oh gosh. I mean, I gotta say this, Fanis, you asked this question as someone who's new as a dealer. This is tough because the thing that I use as my biggest weapon in these circumstances is knowing what I'm doing and being good at it. I will tell you this. I do not ever tell people how long I've been dealing, what my experience is, any of that stuff. For me, it's all about clear communication. And these are pretty good examples of clear communication as these suggestions. But one thing that you can do that might diffuse this also would be to try to state what they're saying. Like, okay, so you're telling me that this and this and this and this, and by showing that you care about their message with clarity and the ability to communicate what's actually being said, that can diffuse it as well. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm going to understand what they're saying, why they're saying it. I'm going to understand it from the player standpoint. I'm going to understand it from the dealer standpoint. If I'm new, I'm still developing all that. So, yeah. Interesting. Jason says, I used to work at a suicide prevention call center, and that was a tactic that worked to great effect on people who were distraught and lashing out. That makes a lot of sense. And so this is for people who have sort of snapped a little bit as well, where a person who has, my friend used to describe it as they would sometimes go into panic mode where they completely lost control of their emotions. Maybe somebody set them off or something. Look, that seems really valuable if there's a person who's lost their mind. And, you know, I have a friend of mine who, as a poker dealer, snapped and tried to kill somebody at the table, like chase them around the room. Kill might be the wrong word, but they had to be held back by like 5 people before they got fired. In that case, those tactics would be very valuable. Yeah. That was very sad. I was very sad to hear that had happened to that individual, where they had been holding in so much, and then just that one person just needled them the wrong way or something, and they actually lost control of themselves. Super rare to hear about employees doing that at the poker table. It's the only time I've ever actually even heard of anything like that, but I'm sure it happens. Let's see, did I miss anything else here? We got some comments in here. I'm trying to wind this down, and you guys are just firing away. I love it. By the way, I'm very open to all these comments. Send them. Let's talk through whatever you guys want before I go. So I think I read this already. I just try to empathize with their feelings. Poker can be emotionally traumatic for some. I understated that when I read that earlier. It can be emotionally traumatic for players, right? Like when a person's sitting at the table, how much money do they have in their life? Did they make a decision that was well thought out to take the money that they have in their life and gamble with it? There's so much to that, right? Like, every single person who's dealt poker for longer than a year has literally dealt to somebody who has, in the moment that they lost a pot, no longer been able to pay rent. There's no question about that. So having people in those circumstances that you're dealing to and being new, it's like empathizing with whatever they're going through, what they lost, is really important. That's why we're a little bit more patient with somebody that's cursing right after they lose a big pot. Like, you know, we're not trying to make it worse. At the same time, there's certain lines they're not allowed to cross that don't matter. Ray says, "Sup, poker buddy." Like it. All right. Tony said, I understand the approach. I like it. But in schools, they always say call the floor, right or wrong. I knew I missed something there. So when there's someone that's like really upset, yes, you call the floor. And thank you for this question. You don't offer to get a floor when they're really upset. You call the floor, but that's you protecting yourself. Okay. The difference that I'm trying to communicate here is, if a player is upset with you because you're new, if it doesn't actually need you to call the floor, you can still offer it as a way to diffuse it, as like a programmed. I mean, what Fanis was looking for as someone who's new, that says that they're so new that they still feel like they suck as a dealer, but there they are in casinos dealing. Like, as someone in that situation, you need an automatic thing to do that doesn't take a lot of thought, that you can just train yourself to say. And so I was basically saying, if somebody's complaining about your dealing because you suck, you offering to call the floor can diffuse that. It's giving the player an actual way to handle their problem, right? Maybe you do need to be tapped out of the table. Maybe you don't know, like maybe you're dealing PLO and it's ruining the game because you're just that new. I mean, it is possible. And so offering to call the floor is something that you can totally do there. Now, if there's a situation that is problematic where someone's getting confrontational, out of line, or they're not just giving you feedback about something that you did as a dealer, and instead they're giving you feedback about something that was an actual mistake, right? There's a difference between a player telling a dealer, hey, you're exposing a card to seat 1 before me, and a player telling a dealer, you messed this up, right? Well, if they tell you you actually messed something up, then you would probably call the floor. I say probably because, maybe you're completely aware of what it was and you can explain it to them even if you're new. But if someone's saying you messed up, it's not a like, would you like me to call the floor? It's a call the floor. And just so you know, there's this instinct a lot of us have when we're new, or even if we've been there for a while, not wanting to get in trouble. And I just want you guys to know that the chances are incredibly high, if you made an actual mistake, that someone at that table is going to go tell the floor right to their face after you walk away. And if that happens, the severity of the consequence of the fact that you did not call a floor is pretty high, possibly final written warning high. So if you actually did make a mistake at the table and they bring it to your attention, you calling the floor and getting them over there, it might result in some type of training, might result in a little bit of paperwork, but I promise you, the severity of that is going to be way less than the severity of them finding out and watching it happen on tape after the fact, them finding out from a player, high chance that they're going to tell on you, high chance, just the way that it is, and them finding out that way and then having to pull you aside days after the fact where you get hit with that. And I've had to do that with dealers, and I've seen that a lot as well. So that's hopefully good feedback for you there. Let's see. That's good too. I can sense your frustration. I mean, it's another good tactic. At a poker table, putting someone on blast at a poker table is tough though. That's sort of where I was coming from with, like, you sound angry, or I can sense your frustration. If a player's at a table, there's this other game that they're often playing other than poker, where it's like, do people respect me? It's like a status type of game. A lot of people at the table are there for not winning money. They want to win money, but it's because they want people to, like, look up to them or think that they're awesome. And calling somebody out in that way, you sound angry, or I can sense your frustration. It's great if somebody's snapped, but if they're just like being them, it's lowering their status unintentionally. I like to give a person shit, but you're telling me that, Fantasy, you're telling me you're new, so that doesn't necessarily work unless you're just really good at it, right? I like to give someone shit because it creates camaraderie and elevates status for everybody. As long as you can give them shit in a way that's like, they're not, it has to be done carefully, okay? You have to do it in a way that's like buddy. It can't be in a way that's like actually putting them down, right? So, they come at you with something, and you talk about how, let me see, what's actually a good example? This is so easy to do in the moment and hard to do not in the moment. Maybe you point out to them, like, yeah, I can tell that would bother you because you have, your coffee came out perfect. I don't know, like, it's dependent upon what's in front of them. But if you're able to do that, it can certainly diffuse it as well. It's just really hard to give that advice to somebody who's new. But ultimately, giving people a hard time in a camaraderie way that doesn't cross the line and makes it so that they have to respond positively to you, the thing that you're saying, and they can't do the thing that they just did again. Like, a bad example would be like, you sound like my grandma, right? Like, now you're sort of crossing the line and making them actually look bad. But a good example might be, I have a friend that sounds just like you. I'm going to tell him about this later, something like that. It's not a good example. Whatever. It's hard to do this stuff not in the moment. I do actually teach that stuff in my course a little bit too. Jason says, thanks so much, Mark, for the great discussion and your feedback. I appreciate that, and you're welcome. And thanks for contributing so much to it. I think you guys are awesome. Jason said, bad bankroll management plus bad beats can be devastating. Absolutely. Tony said, understood. Jacob, welcome. I'm anti-vax. Should I even try getting a job? Very interesting question. Every single room is going to be different. I started this live stream by saying I got the vaccine and it protected me. I just tested positive for COVID last week. I was in Orlando and my symptoms were insanely mild, which is what the vaccine is supposed to do. That said, I've been stuck in quarantine still and I can't work until I get a negative test. that's after having the Moderna vaccine. Now, that being said, there's a lot of people that are anti-vaccine. This is like such a bigger topic than what your, like, it's a big topic, okay? I'm going to just assume for right now that we're not going to discuss anything about the vaccine in itself, and we're not going to discuss pros, cons, any of that stuff. To my knowledge, there are currently not poker rooms that are requiring evidence of a vaccine. That being said, I do know of poker rooms, multiple, that tell the dealers that they must wear a mask if they are not vaccinated. And you don't have to wear a mask if you are vaccinated. So to a degree, the only way to not put yourself on blast all the time for not being vaccinated would be to basically misrepresent yourself in the room and lie about that without, you're not actually lying to anybody, but you'd be not wearing a mask, pretending that you're vaccinated. So, and then like maybe one day they actually do ask for documentation. I don't really know. I do know that there are a lot of people that deal poker that are not vaccinated. Not a ton, but there's a lot of people that work in poker that are not vaccinated. And there's a ton that are. I think in terms of getting a job, you should probably be able to get a job. I think in terms of being able to predict the future of whether or not this is going to matter in the future is really hard for me to predict. It's very case by case, poker room by poker room. It's very, it's hard to predict. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to this conversation. So I think if you're an experienced dealer, go for it. But by the way, Jacob, you asked the question specifically, I'm anti-vax, should I even try getting a job? The perspective that I'm answering this from is whether or not you'd be able to get a job and whether or not you'd be able to work. I'm not answering this from the perspective of like, should I even try getting a job because maybe I'll get COVID, right? Like that part is a completely separate risk that you have to analyze on your own. That the reason that I got the vaccine is that I don't want to deal with that, right? So, you know, there's a lot there, but let me know if I answered you in a way that was satisfying. Hit Girl says, we had a Hit Girl. I see 4 comments from you. I'm like, Hit Girl might be single-handedly try to make this another 2 hours, just like she asked. We had a new player win a huge 3-way all-in and immediately request to cash out before the chips were stacked. Losing player said it was dirty, etc., then crossed a line with name-calling. I said I can sense your frustration, but berating players is not allowed, and it worked, and that's a good example. New player, and it didn't understand poker etiquette. Thanks, I played too, so I get how sucky it would be to have someone hit and run too. Well, your name is Hit Girl, which is sort of funny in this. Now, if it was Hit and Run Girl, that'd be even funnier. But to address the example that you just gave, first of all, that's awesome that you were able to handle it that way. And I think that applying this to a specific example is much more valuable than giving it as a widely ranged solution, right? In this particular situation, it makes total sense. The player's complaining about something that is a part of the game but sucks. So it's something that everybody at the table can relate to feeling the frustration for, right? If it's a circumstance where somebody's complaining about something that doesn't make any sense, it might not work as well, right? Because it would come across as lying if you were to empathize with them and say that you feel their frustration. So in this case, it's fantastic. It totally makes sense. And also shout out to, but berating players is not allowed, as the feedback you give immediately after that. Very smart. Totally liked seeing that example that way. And by the way, in that scenario, I feel like poker players are constantly trying to pressure other poker players into not doing that. And the rules of poker haven't gotten anywhere to be able to really effectively stop somebody from doing this. It's interesting, there's a handful of things in the game of poker that are like this, where the rules totally allow it, and it's social pressure without any actual rule that keeps people in line, It sort of makes me think of baseball. There's all these things that baseball players, like, they're in the rules of baseball for you to be able to do, but if you do them, everybody shuns you and you're like out of the family. Sort of how this stuff works here too. And then Jason says, that's great, hit girl. It sounds like you handled that very well. Well, I totally agree with that too. Yeah. This is another thing too. It's like, this is very case by case, situation by situation. The longer you're a dealer, the more individual, unique situations that you interact with, right? It's like, how do you become a good dealer? Well, you learn how to deal to pass an audition, and then you become a dealer, and you gain lots of experience for all these types of human interactions. And like I said, the very first way that I answered this question that was asked before about, if I'm new and I suck and people give me a hard time, what do I do? Well, you fail. That's something that's going to happen. It's just a part of it. It's okay. Like, and then there's all these other little things that we built into that. D1 Key says, did I hear you correctly when you said you played baseball in college? So my ex-wife gives me a very hard time because I sometimes bring that up, and she's like, ooh, Mark played college baseball. My friends from when I first broke into the casino industry used to tease me because I would bring that up sometimes. Yes, I did say that in a previous live stream, and now I have to clip this section and send it to my ex-wife. Let's see. Jacob says, yes, you answered well. Thank you. I've dealt home games for 7 to 8 years. I inquired to a school in Mississippi in February 2020 just for some formal training because I would like to deal the 2 to 3 week events in the Southeast. Then March came. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I appreciate you giving that feedback, that you feel like the question was answered. And formal training definitely makes a difference going from home game to something like that. Just in case anyone's wondering what the 2 to 3 week events mean, a lot of poker rooms will have big tournament series where outside staff comes in because there's so much more poker being played during these moments that outside staff comes in, and there's like tournament circuit dealers that will travel place to place to place to place to deal, and those dealers sometimes are not enough to cover all the extra tables and dealers that are needed. And so a lot of the time there'll be people like who do what Jason or Jacob's talking about, who they literally set themselves up to just be able to jump in for whenever that happens. Maybe it's every 3 months, every 6 months, once a year, whatever it is. And you sort of like go in, get your cash, work 2 to 3 weeks every day in a row, and then get out. And I know maybe 2 or 3 people who are retired in Florida when the tournament series come to town. They're experienced dealers that I used to work with, and they just jump in and do that. So you can be a traveling circuit dealer, or you can be a local whenever there's a big tournament series dealer. And I mean, my guess is you'd probably be fine in that type of a circumstance, but it's super hard to tell. It's like very situation dependent. When I say fine, I mean nobody would give you a hard time about it. And also, I'm answering your question from the perspective of not about anybody's beliefs or anything like that. I'm trying to speak about whether they would hire you. I'm not trying to speak about morally, if that makes sense, or any of that stuff. I leave that to each individual. I mean, unless somebody asks me those questions, and I do try to answer everything. And D1 Key says, my brother played college baseball for the University of Alabama at Birmingham for 5 years. That's pretty cool. My guess is that was probably a D1 school. I just played Division III, so let me humble myself slightly. I played Division III. I was on a team that went to the College World Series one year. That was a lot of fun, and like we were really competitive, but it was Division III. And it's like the difference in Division III is the pitching. And part of the reason we went to the College World Series is because we basically had Division I pitchers that happened to be at our school on our team, because it was a prestigious academic school. So these people who had baseball skills also wanted to go to this school. But it was a really cool experience for what it's worth. Playing baseball in high school and college was fun and fulfilling in a lot of ways. Picture it didn't happen. Oh gosh. So if I put a pic of myself having played college baseball on here, man, the clip that I have to send my ex-wife becomes absolutely insane. So let me do this. I searched for my name, and because like I used to, when I searched for my name on YouTube, I used to on Google, I used to find a bunch of stuff about my stats playing, and I searched for my name here, and I'm scrolling through. All right, let me try this. Once I find it, I'll pop it up. I hate you guys, by the way. All right, let me see this. All right, here. I'm going to show you guys this. It's not a picture of me playing. It's something that will equally do the same thing. Let me find this. It's not that. It's this. Okay. So you can see here, I found this is something. It says Thomas More Saints Baseball. It's a box score from 2004. And you can scroll down, and you can see that for my team, which is Rensselaer, here I was, the shortstop, 5 at-bats, 2 hits and 2 RBIs. It's making me look good. I was pretty good, but I wouldn't say I was the best player on the team, but I certainly did my job. And there you go. You guys can see that I played college baseball, and that's the extent of what I feel like I want to show here. I don't have anything like embarrassing. I'm just like trying to search for an old picture like that would be sort of funny, but I don't know exactly where I would find it quickly. So that wasn't a pick. It did happen. So my question is, did that fulfill you guys? I think I'm going to leave it at that and say appreciate you guys very much. I enjoy that you guys get me to blush a little bit here. And thank you all for spending this time with me. And oh, by the way, I should mention I am looking for somebody out there who is interested in clipping moments from my live streams and interviews so that I can easily just turn these into separate videos. Part of the reason that I don't break these down into smaller chunk videos, which is what ultimately people prefer most of the time, is because it takes a long time. So if there's anybody out there that is interested in something like that, send me an email at right there. Tony says, thank you, Mark. Very instructive, as always. Appreciate you. Jason says, thanks. Thank you guys, too. You guys have been awesome, as always. All right. Appreciate you. Till next time.